Chapter 356. Elven Death Warrant. As Su Xiaochun walked in, the few radical old elves in the hall looked at each other and shook their heads, not saying a word. Su Xiaochun looked at those people and then looked at Shu Changkong. She said seriously, "Father, without him, I would have died a long time ago. You all said that the two-legged monsters were extremely vicious, but they never hurt me. We elves are particular about repaying kindness. If you want to kill them now, aren't you biting the hand that feeds you? Xiaochun, they are two-legged monsters after all. We can't disobey our ancestors' teachings," said the old elf who had spoken earlier. Su Xiaochun glanced at him and said, "We can't disobey our ancestors' teachings, but the Mother of Fairies also taught us that we fairies are the spirits of nature. We are particular about being neutral and peaceful, being close to nature, and biting the hand that feeds us. Is this what the Mother of Fairies taught us?" The old elf was taken aback and didn't speak. The hall quieted down as pairs of eyes stared at Qin Feng. Some of them were still filled with coldness, while others had complicated expressions. If it weren't for the fact that they had saved Princess Xiaochun, they wouldn't have cared so much. However, Su Xiaochun's status in the elf tribe was very special. The elves advocated matriarchal descent, which was why they were called the Mother of the Elves. Su Xiaochun's lineage had the purest elven bloodline. She was the only pure-blooded princess of the elves. In the future, she would be nurtured as the Mother of the Elves and be the ruler of the entire elven race. Her position in life were naturally extremely important, and her words carried a lot of weight in certain aspects, even though she was not the Mother of the Elves yet. Because of this, they couldn't make up their minds and didn't kill a few two-legged monsters on the spot. Shu Changkong had an unreadable smile on his face. He looked at his daughter with gratification in his eyes. "Everyone, if you have any objections, feel free to voice them out. We can discuss them amongst ourselves." He looked around and smiled. "Father, what else is there to discuss? We can't bite the hand that feeds us," Su Xiaochun said. Shu Changkong looked at his daughter and smiled. "Xiaochun, we can't disobey the teachings of our ancestors. We can't coexist with the two-legged monsters. Have you forgotten how the elves came here?" Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. He deeply felt that this elf patriarch was unfathomable. He seemed to want to follow the ancestral teachings and kill the few of them, but his tone obviously didn't have much killing intent. He had been observing the reactions of everyone present. Su Xiaochun was speechless. Indeed, she did not refute this point. In the eyes of the elves, two-legged monsters were evil beyond redemption. If they encountered them, they would definitely kill them. She used to think so too, but after interacting with them, she deeply realized that two-legged monsters didn't seem to be that scary. They were just as kind as she was. She used gratitude as an excuse, but they used the teachings of their ancestors. For a moment, they were in a deadlock. Seeing this, Qin Feng gently pushed Su Xiaochun away and looked at Shu Changkong calmly. "Qin Feng, don't talk nonsense. The elves hate you two-legged monsters very much," she reminded in a low voice. Qin Feng smiled at her. Finally, he looked around the room and said loudly, "I want to ask everyone here in your lifetime who has really come into contact with a human, the two-legged monster in your mouth. The ancestral teachings say that if we encounter a two-legged monster, we must kill it." "That's enough," the radical old elf snorted. Qin Feng looked at him and shook his head. "We can't ignore the words of our ancestors, but we also have to look at the current situation. There was a period in the past when humans and elves might have existed in a dark age. But times are changing. Humans and elves are also developing. Years have changed, and that dark age has long passed. Humans and elves may not be natural enemies and can't coexist." How can elves and humans coexist? If we were on opposing sides, you would still say this now, the old elf said. "That's right. Our ancestors used their battle and blood to tell us that humans can't get close. Otherwise, we will repeat that tragic period. You're just a yellow-haired child. What do you know? How can the grudges between our races be resolved with just a few words?" Some old elves spoke out. They were amused by Qin Feng's words. Qin Feng shook his head slightly. He naturally knew that no matter how much he said, it would be difficult to change these old-fashioned antiques in a short period of time. He did not say much in this regard. Instead, he suddenly asked, "You should know that I entered your ancestral land. I'll apologize here first. I didn't mean to walk in. What I want to say is that none of you care how a two-legged monster like me could enter your ancestral land and return safely." His words caused the hall to instantly quiet down. Numerous pairs of eyes stared at him with puzzlement in their eyes. Indeed, the elven ancestral land was extremely dangerous. Only during special times could one enter it. Otherwise, even if the elves entered, they would be in danger. How could a two-legged monster walk out so easily? The eyes of the group of elves flickered. Shu Changkong slowly frowned, then asked, "How did you walk out from there?" "Because your mother, the elves, owed my ancestors something," Qin Feng said. The hall suddenly fell silent. Then, angry laughter rang out. "Ignorant child, how can the great mother, the elves, be blasphemed by you? You're courting death." A powerful elf rushed over and suppressed Qin Feng with his powerful spiritual energy. Qin Feng's expression did not change. He calmly raised his right hand. A black light burst out from his palm and shattered the spiritual energy. The powerful elf's body shook. Then he retreated quickly. "Arrogant brat, how dare you be so fierce in our elven race?" Suddenly, several more powerful elves attacked. "Back off!" Shu Changkong shouted softly. Spiritual energy surged forth, causing the elves' attacks to stop. The elves retreated, but their eyes were still cold. Shu Changkong stared at Qin Feng, then said, "Continue." Qin Feng smiled and took out the cyan token. He waved it in front of the elves and said, "I wonder if the elf clan's patriarch and everyone here are familiar with this token." In the hall, the atmosphere suddenly froze. All the elves stared at the green token in Qin Feng's hand. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. "This is the Elven Death Order?" Shu Changkong stared at the token in Qin Feng's hand without blinking, then asked, "How did you get this token?" "Your mother of the elves gave it to me," Qin Feng said. The hall suddenly became silent. Following that, heavy breathing sounds rose and fell. Looking at the green token in Qin Feng's hand, there was excitement in their eyes and tears were also flickering in their eyes. Elven Death Order. The mother of the elves is not completely dead. She is still protecting us. Chapter 357. Leaving helplessly seeing Shu Changkong and the elves who were releasing killing intent towards him kneeling down, Qin Feng was slightly stunned. He looked at the token in his hand and thought, "This token is so useful." He originally thought that they would at least not make things difficult for them after seeing this token. Now, it seemed that he had underestimated the power of this token. "Patriarch Shu, please rise." Qin Feng quickly said, "I don't want to ask you for anything. I just want you to not make things difficult for me and my friends. The mother of the elves gave me this token. I guess that's what she meant." "Have seen the mother of the elves?" The old elf said, tears flowing down his old eyes. Qin Feng nodded. The group of elves was excited. They had always thought that the mother of the elves had passed away long ago. Since ancient times, no one had ever seen the mother of the elves. They could only enter the ancestral land during special times, and all they saw was the stone statue. Sometimes they even doubted the existence of the mother of the elves. Now it seemed that the mother of the elves really existed, and had always been protecting them. The group of elves looked at Qin Feng differently. They no longer had hatred and killing intent. No matter what his identity was, being able to see the mother of the elves and receive the Elven Death Order from the mother of the elf was enough to show that he had received the mother of the elves' approval. Shu Xiaochun also looked at Qin Feng in a daze. Even she, who was raised as the mother of the elves, did not have any reaction in front of the stone statue. How did a two-legged monster get the mother of the elves' approval? Patriarch Shu, seniors, I don't want to criticize the teachings of your ancestors, but the darkness of the past should not have lasted until now. In the era of the mother of the elves, elves and humans could fight side by side and coexist peacefully. My ancestor had a good relationship with the elves. He left an item for the mother of the elves to preserve, hoping that one day his descendants would come here to accept his inheritance. This is why I can enter your ancestral land and see the mother of the elves. Qin Feng looked at the elves and said slowly, "So you are the descendant of my ancestor's friend." The very old elf said, "The great mother of the elves gave you the elven death order, which is already a sign of her approval of you. On the contrary, we went a bit overboard." Qin Feng was relieved that the elves' attitude towards him had improved. At least they weren't in any danger here. Ha 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 ha. I didn't expect the mother of the fairies to still be here. It's really a great blessing for the fairies. Men, prepare the food and wine. Let's get drunk today. Shu Changkong laughed heartily. Soon enough, Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and exploding blossoms were brought over. The latter had obviously been treated by someone, and his injuries were more than half healed. Tonight, the light elves' territory was brightly lit. Orioles sang and swallows danced. It had to be said that the elves were extremely good at singing and dancing. The men were handsome and the women were pretty. However, their tastes were indeed very different from that of humans. Qin Feng and the others felt uncomfortable. Fortunately, there were careful people who had hunted many spirit beasts. They were barbecued and stewed. Soon, a fragrant aroma filled the air. As soon as Exploding Blossoms saw food, her eyes lit up and she gorged herself. During the banquet, some of the elders of the elves would ask about what had happened in the ancestral land from time to time. Qin Feng knew what they were thinking, so he didn't hide anything about the mother of the fairies. After a few cups of wine, Qin Feng felt a bit dizzy. He left the lively place and felt the cold wind blow. His swollen head gradually sobered up. He looked at the boundless darkness, and his eyes gradually deepened. He knew that the light elf situation wasn't good from their conversation. The dark elves had made contact with the people from the imperial capital, and according to what they knew, there were also many superpower houses. Qin Feng knew that the main reason why the imperial capital had allied with the light elves was to capture him. He originally thought that he could escape the imperial capital's pursuit by escaping into the 100,000 Barren Mountains. Now, it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy. Moreover, now that they were involved with the light elves, this matter would be even more difficult to resolve. "You're thinking about the imperial capital." Suddenly, a soft voice sounded. Qin Feng turned his head and saw Tan Xian sitting on a tree branch, looking at the pitch-black stars. His usual lazy smile was replaced by calmness. Qin Feng jumped on the tree and sat down, looking up at the sky. "Do you think we should stay out of this or help the light elves unify the elven race? From a personal standpoint, we shouldn't get involved in the elven race's internal affairs." Tan Xian shook his head, then changed the topic. "But from a public standpoint, their ancestors and our ancestors belong to the same camp. We shouldn't just stand by and watch." Qin Feng didn't hide the fact that he had entered the elven race's territory from Tan Xian and the others. Qin Feng was silent for a while. After a long time, he sighed. "If we stay, I don't know what will happen." To be honest, he didn't think that the light elves had much of a chance of winning. After all, the difference between the two sides wasn't that big. Now that the dark elves had allied with the imperial capital and many nearby spirit beast clans, their overall strength had increased. If they helped the light elves, once they were defeated, they wouldn't be able to live either. Without the wood elven mother's inheritance, Qin Feng wouldn't have had so many misgivings and would have just left. But now he couldn't do that. The elven race had a good relationship with his ancestors. If the light elves were to be destroyed because of this, he would feel uneasy. "Yes, if we stay, once we are defeated, I'm afraid we will also die without a burial ground." Tan Xian turned to look at Jing Wui, who was happily laughing with Su Xiaochun, and sighed. He might not choose to leave. Qin Feng was silent. His eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. The night gradually deepened. Qin Feng lay on the bed, unable to fall asleep. He was still hesitating whether or not to leave. After thinking for a long time, he sat up and operated the divine wood technique. Strands of wood energy were poured into the jade pendant, nourishing Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi's vitality. Even with the divine wood technique, if he wanted to restore their consciousness, it wouldn't be done overnight. It would take time. After operating for nearly an hour, Qin Feng stopped and quietly lay on the bed. Sister, Xiaoxi, one day, I'll resurrect you. The next day, Qin Feng was woken up by the commotion outside. He sat up abruptly, his eyes sharp. He walked out of the tree hole. It was already a mess outside. There were teams of light elves everywhere, each of them holding a weapon in their hands. Their expressions were solemn as they left from different directions. The dark elves have already begun their attack. Tan Xian walked over. Qin Feng looked at him and the explosion and asked, "Where's Jing Wui?" Tan Xian shook his head and sighed. He said, "We can't gamble everything here. He told us to leave first." Qin Feng was startled. Jing Wui still made such a choice. The two spoke at the same time. Then they looked at each other, nodded slightly, and left. Chapter 358. Crisis. The battle between the Light Elves and the Dark Elves wasn't small. Because many experts from the Imperial capital had joined in, the Light Elves were quickly defeated. But the Light Elves had Guardian of Light enter the battlefield and barely managed to stop their decline. But the situation on their side was still very unstable. In a forest within the Light Elves' territory, Jing Wui and a few Light Elves who weren't weak quickly left with Shu Xiaochun. "Big brother, why didn't Qin Feng and the others come?" Shu Xiaochun followed behind Jing Wui and asked him for the third time. Jing Wui cautiously scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there was no danger, he brought Shu Xiaochun to hide in a dense forest. "Xiaochun, do you still remember what we said when we first met?" Jing Wui pulled Shu Xiaochun's hand and said softly, "We were chased into the 100,000 Bear Mountains. It was also a coincidence that we ended up here. They had to leave here because they all had their own missions. They couldn't stay here forever." Shu Xiaochun blankly looked at Jing Wui and asked, "Qin Feng and the others all left. They had to leave." Jing Wui nodded and said, "We survived until now because many people sacrificed their lives. Our lives don't only belong to us." Shu Xiaochun's eyes gradually dimmed. She lowered her head and felt very depressed. Seeing this, Jing Wui patted her head and sighed. He immediately restrained his emotions and cautiously watched the situation outside. The battle lasted for a long time before it gradually stopped. Jing Wui ordered 2 Light Elves to go out and scout the situation. Not long after, they returned with a group of Light Elves. "Big brother." Shu Xiaochun was overjoyed and wanted to run out, but Jing Wui quickly pulled her back. "What's wrong?" She stared blankly and turned to look at Jing Wui. The latter's eyes flickered, but he didn't answer. But the other Light Elves behind him quickly greeted and loudly said, "Your Highness, the princess is here." "Xiaochun." Shu Ling's eyes lit up, and he hurried over. Looking at the approaching Shu Ling, Jing Wui frowned and sighed in his heart. He came from an assassin organization and was best at hiding, ambushing, and had a keen sense of danger. He always felt that it was too dangerous to walk out without any preparation. But now that things had come to this, it was too late for him to say anything. He could only reach out his hand to Shu Xiaochun. Shu Ling was relieved to see that Shu Xiaochun was fine. She looked at Jing Wui gratefully and said, "Thank you." Jing Wui waved his hand and asked, "What's the situation now?" Shu Ling shook her head inwardly. With the addition of the experts from the Imperial capital, the overall strength of the Dark Elves has increased greatly. Fortunately, we still have the Guardians of Light. We can still hold on for a while. This is also not a long-term solution, Jing Wui said, shaking his head. "Not bad." Shu Ling nodded, then looked at Shu Xiaochun and said, "Father has the same concern, so he wants Xiaochun to hide in the ancestral land for a while. Xiaochun is the most qualified person to become the mother of fairies. As long as she is fine, the fairy race will never disappear." Jing Wui knew why Shu Ling said so much to him. After a moment of silence, he said, "Qin Feng and the others have already left. There are more important things waiting for them to complete." Shu Ling's eyes dimmed, and she sighed. She originally wanted Qin Feng to hide in the ancestral land with Shu Xiaochun. After all, he was the only one who had been recognized by the Mother of Fairies. But now that he had left, no one could enter the ancestral land, not even the fairies. Unless it was a special period, they would get lost inside. Whoosh! Suddenly, a beam of light shot over. Jing Wui and Shu Ling's expressions changed drastically. They moved at the same time and dispersed the beam of light. Then, their faces darkened. A few people walked over from the forest. They were all very powerful. A dark elf, a night walker, and 3 experts from the imperial capital, Xianyuan Owl, Xianyuan Xiantian, and Ouyang Yi. Only you? Seeing Jing Wui, Xianyuan Owl's eyes narrowed. Deicide flashed in his hand, and a fierce spiritual energy surged out of his body. Jing Wui stared at the 4 people with a serious expression. His hands were slightly trembling. This time, he was in trouble. He had fought with them before, and none of them were weaker than him. Now that 4 of them had come, the threat was too great. Shu Ling's face also darkened. She had fought with them before, so she naturally knew how powerful they were. "Brother Jing, take Xiaochun and leave," Shu Ling whispered. "If they can enter here, it means that they have broken through our defense. The reinforcements of the light fairies shouldn't be here in a short time. Take Xiaochun into the ancestral land. Xiaochun's bloodline is the purest. At least there is a chance." Hearing this, Jing Wui smiled bitterly. "Among the 4 of them, 3 of them are targeting me. Do you think they will give me a chance? Since it has come to this, I can only fight." Jing Wui's body shook, and a strong spiritual energy surged out. Seeing this, the Nightwalker smiled faintly and said to Xianyuan Owl and the others, "Brothers, remember our agreement. As long as you help us capture Xiaochun, the light fairies will unite. We will do our best to help you capture the remaining people. Let's do it. I have fought with them before. Even if victory is in our hands, we can't give them the slightest chance," Xianyuan Owl said. Of course, the underworld walker laughed out loud. Spiritual energy surged around his body and whizzed towards them. At the same time, Xianyuan Xiao and the other 2 also rushed over. Powerful spiritual energy exploded. "Guards of light, fight with me," Shu Ling shouted and fought with the Nightwalker. Yes, more than a dozen guards of light responded in unison, releasing a strong power to block Ouyang Yi. Jing Wui wanted to block Xianyuan Owl, but Xianyuan Xiantian stood in front of him and sneered, "The royal family has really miscalculated for an assassin organization like you. But your opponent this time is me." He stared at Jing Wui indifferently and was not in a hurry to attack. Jing Wui did not have time to talk nonsense with him. He had been paying attention to Xianyuan Owl, and his heart was heavy. Although there were only 4 of them, each of them was very strong. He and Shu Ling could block 2 of them, and the dozen guards of light could block 1. But the remaining 1 could not be blocked by the light fairies. Facing a powerhouse of this level, unless there were enough powerhouses of the small heaven realm or a super powerhouse of the 9th heaven realm, it was impossible to block him. Xianyuan Owl was entangled with more than a dozen light fairies. He frowned slightly. "Did you really leave?" After fighting for a while, Qin Feng and the others still did not appear. Xianyuan Owl lost his patience, shook off a few light fairies, and rushed towards Xiaochun. "Xiao!" Jing Wui quickly rushed over and attacked Xianyuan Owl. The latter struck out with a palm and blocked all of his attacks. Chapter 359. Confrontation with Xianyuan Owl. Jing Wui had just stabilized his body when he heard Xianyuan Xuantian's voice. His pupils shrank and his figure flashed, leaving behind afterimages. He quickly dodged, but his arm was still pierced. Good movement technique. Xianyuan Xuantian's face revealed an excited expression. This kind of opponent made his blood boil. "Brother Xianyuan, you're a bit slow." When the Dark Walker saw that Xianyuan Owl still hadn't caught Shu Xiaochun, his tone revealed some dissatisfaction. "Brother Dark, I want to remind you that we are cooperating, not your subordinates." Xianyuan Owl calmly dodged the crazy attacks of the light spirits and replied. The Dark Walker's eyes darkened, but he immediately smiled and said, "I'm sorry, but the experts of the light spirits might be coming soon. Brother Xianyuan, please be careful. After all, this is our main goal." Xianyuan Owl frowned and sighed in his heart. His attacks suddenly became fierce, sending a dozen light spirits flying. Then, in a flash, he appeared in front of Shu Xiaochun. The long sword in his hand flashed and chopped down toward her head. Shu Ling saw the situation and immediately rushed over, but she was firmly held back by the Dark Walker. She simply couldn't make it in time. "Xin Yuanao, what are you doing? I want to catch her alive." The Dark Walker shouted. Jing Wui was rushing over as well, but Xin Yuan Xintian blocked his path. "Compared to falling into their hands, I think you'd rather die." "I'm sorry," Xin Yuan Owl coldly said, and heavily chopped down with his long sword. Shu Xiaochun looked at the incomparably fierce long sword that was chopping down toward her and slowly closed her eyes. She couldn't avoid being locked on by this kind of expert. "Sister." Jing Wui's eyes were bloodshot, and the blood-colored spiritual energy around his body seemed to be boiling. He shook off Xin Yuan Xintian and quickly rushed over. However, he was too far away, and Xin Yuan Owl wouldn't give anyone a chance to save her. However, when his long sword was less than 10 centimeters away from Shu Xiaochun's head, it suddenly stopped. It seemed that he had suddenly pulled back, or it seemed that something had stopped him. Everyone stopped what they were doing when they saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with confusion and bewilderment. Only Jing Wui heaved a heavy sigh of relief. "You two fellows." He shook his head and smiled. He knew who had made a move. Su Xiaochun stared blankly at this scene. Her mind was a mess. What was going on? Xin Yuan Owl was also stunned for a moment. Then, he came back to his senses and smiled faintly. "You're finally here. Show yourself." This kind of concealment is useless against people at our level. Qin Feng. Qin Feng? Shu Xiaochun's eyes suddenly widened. She quickly glanced around, but there was no sign of Qin Feng. Huh. To be able to deal such a heavy blow to an innocent person, as expected of a member of the royal family. Just as she was at a loss, a sneer sounded in front of her. Then, a figure slowly appeared in front of her. This figure knelt on one knee and put his palms together to block the long sword. Shu Xiaochun was all too familiar with this figure. "Qin Feng." She widened her eyes, which were filled with mist. "You didn't leave." "I left, but I'm back. One can't avoid another mission in order to complete one task. Am I right, Fourth Prince?" Qin Feng raised his head and stared at Xin Yuan Owl. His spiritual energy suddenly erupted. Xin Yuan Shao drifted out of the room with a faint smile on his face. He said softly, "There are some things that you can't avoid even if you run away. Where's Tan Xian?" Qin Feng flipped his hand, and the sky-splitting axe appeared in his hand. His fighting spirit sword. Xin Yuan Owl's eyes gradually became serious. He tightened his grip on the sword. Facing Qin Feng, he didn't dare to be careless. Seeing this, the Nightwalker couldn't help but feel angry. He didn't care if Qin Feng and the others left or came back. He only cared about whether or not they could catch Shu Xiaochun. It was a great opportunity, but it was wasted by these people from the imperial capital. If it wasn't for their cooperation, he would have cursed out loud. For Xin Yuan Owl and the others, this was the best result. They didn't care if they could catch Shu Xiaochun. Their goal was Qin Feng and the others. The main reason they cooperated with the Dark Elves was to catch Qin Feng and the others. If the Dark Elves unified the Elven clan, they would help them to hunt down Qin Feng and the others. However, it was also possible that the Dark Elves would turn against them. After all, the Dark Elves couldn't be trusted. If that happened, the Imperial Capital's people would have no choice but to retreat. Xin Yuan Owl could not be wary of this. Hence, he didn't rush to make a move against Shu Xiaochun. Instead, he waited for Qin Feng and the others to arrive. It could be said that the Imperial Capital's cooperation with the Dark Elves had their own goals. This caused them to disagree with Qin Feng and the others when it came to dealing with the Dark Elves. This cooperation wasn't ironclad. The appearance of Qin Feng and the others also allowed Shu Ling to breathe a sigh of relief. He had seen how powerful Qin Feng and the others were. It wouldn't be difficult for them to deal with Xin Yuan Owl and the Nightwalker. With their addition, the balance of power between the two sides immediately tilted. Whoosh! Qin Feng held the sky-splitting axe in his hand and appeared in front of Xin Yuan Owl like a bolt of lightning. The sky-splitting axe smashed down on his head. Xianyuan Owl didn't dodge. His body was like a leaf in the wind, fluttering and flickering. In the blink of an eye, he crossed paths with the charging black figure. At that moment, the long sword in Xianyuan Owl's hand slashed horizontally in an extremely natural manner, borrowing the momentum of his movement technique. A few tiny rays of golden sword energy shot out. They were the first to leave their swords. They slashed towards Qin Feng's neck. Qin Feng's swift attack came to an abrupt halt. The sky-splitting axe flashed. Following a ding-dang sound and some tiny sparks, the few golden sword Qi did not even manage to block Qin Feng's attack and completely dissipated. After blocking the golden sword energy, Qin Feng slightly raised his eyes. His indifferent eyes glanced at Xianyuan Owl, who was passing by. He waved his arm. The sky-splitting axe carried a ferocious force and smashed horizontally behind him. Feeling the oppressive force behind him, Xianyuan Owl's expression didn't change. The long sword in his hand stabbed out violently. The long sword left a golden arc in the empty air. The sharp tip of the sword seemed to have penetrated the obstruction of the air. With a crisp ding sound, the tip of the sword pointed straight at the sky-splitting axe that was smashing horizontally. When the two collided, the ferocious force contained in the sky-splitting axe caused the slender long sword to be pressed into an extremely hair-raising arc. The thrilling appearance of the sword that was about to break caused some surprise to appear on Xianyuan Owl's face. The long sword in his hand wasn't an ordinary magic treasure. After being infused with spiritual power, it was able to withstand an extremely large amount of gravity. And the long sword was bent at the first contact. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the force contained in the gray axe was. And in direct contact, he could also feel the special fluctuation from Qin Feng's axe. In an instant, it caused the spiritual power in his body to stagnate for a moment. However, the sword in his hand wasn't an ordinary item. Although it was bent into such a dangerous arc, it didn't break. When the tip of the sword was about to touch Xianyuan Owl's arm, the latter's foot lightly stomped on the ground. The golden light on the long sword. The sudden surge of power bounced the axe away with a bang. With the help of the rebound force of the two, Xianyuan Owl flew into the air. Endless golden light seeped in from all directions. Chapter 360. To resort to trickery under the burning of the fire, the golden light that filled the sky gradually dissipated. On the contrary, the fire burned brightly and spread toward Xianyuan Owl like a prairie fire. The latter's face darkened. His power of metal was completely suppressed by Qin Feng's power of fire. Taking a deep breath, Xianyuan Owl's long sword floated in front of him. His hands quickly formed a seal, and as the seal was formed, a golden light shone behind him. The long sword suddenly turned golden, and a shocking wave of spiritual energy swept out. Qin Feng's expression gradually turned serious as he watched this scene. The previous head-on exchange had made him realize how difficult it was to deal with Xianyuan Owl. Among the 8 princes, his strength was definitely among the top few. His drooping palm suddenly straightened, and spiritual light spiraled around his fingertips, causing the air to violently ripple. Golden God Sword, light of the sword's spirit. As Xianyuan Owl's voice fell, a golden sword light burst out. Heaven-devouring finger. Qin Feng jabbed out with his finger. The heaven-devouring finger erupted, and a beam of finger light shot out. At the moment when the sword light and the finger light collided, a terrifying shockwave spread out. The golden light and the black light were swept up, turning into a golden and black storm that wreaked havoc in the world. Suddenly, Xianyuan Owl rushed out of the storm, golden light blooming on his fist. Qin Feng also punched out, his black spirit power surging. The two of them streaked across the sky like 2 beams of light. Then, they violently collided with each other. Before their fists came into contact, the ferocious fists had already collided with each other. Sonic booms resounded unceasingly. Numerous frightening forces crazily spread out. The strength of the forces actually caused the empty space to tremble. The power of the golden dragon. Divine dragon technique. All of a sudden, a golden dragon emerged from Xianyuan Owl's arm, while an illusory divine dragon emerged from Qin Feng's body. The two dragons collided and tore at each other. The power of yin and yang. Qin Feng abruptly spread his fingers. Black and white spiritual energy filled the air, bursting with corrosive power. Xianyuan Owl's golden spiritual energy sizzled violently as it shrank. The latter's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, an even greater golden light erupted from his fist. Devour the golden dragon. The golden light transformed into a huge mouth, which instantly devoured Qin Feng's black and white spiritual power. Rumble. The attacks released by the two of them collided to the greatest extent. A terrifying gust of wind spread out, and the two of them were sent flying. While flying backwards, Qin Feng quickly stabilized his body and formed a seal with his hands. Black and white spiritual energy intertwined and hugged each other. The power of yin and yang. Yin-yang heaven swallowing hand. A large black and white hand stretched out of the yin-yang embrace diagram and grabbed at Xianyuan Owl as fast as lightning. Xianyuan Owl's expression changed. He opened his hands and golden spiritual energy swept across the sky. Heavenly Emperor Bell, divine skill. Heavenly Emperor defense. The golden spiritual energy turned into a huge Emperor's bell and enveloped Xianyuan Owl's body. At the same time, the black and white hand stretched out on the golden bell. Dang! Following a deafening metallic sound, the Emperor's bell started to ripple wildly. A crack quietly appeared on the Emperor's bell. Bang! Along with the Emperor's bell shattering, the power in the black and white hand was also used up. Qin Feng pushed his hands forward. In an instant, the air rippled and a sharp sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Mental energy weapons shot towards Xianyuan Owl. The latter's expression was solemn. Golden light surged above his hands. Then he suddenly put his palms together. The golden light was extremely powerful at this moment. As he suddenly separated his hands, a golden wheel appeared. As it rotated, it brought about an extremely powerful defensive force. Emperor's Wheel Divine Skill, Divine Wheel Protection. On the golden divine wheel, lines of golden lines wriggled. Then, the divine wheel rapidly expanded and enveloped Xianyuan Shao. As it spun, any spiritual weapons that got close to it would be destroyed. Furthermore, there were beams of golden light that whizzed towards Qin Feng like a rain of light. Heavenly Water Screen. Boundless power of water gathered rapidly, forming a huge water screen in front of Qin Feng. Within the water screen, the power of water surged crazily, killing the golden rain of light that rushed into it. Golden light flickered within the water screen. Suddenly, a black figure charged out. Qin Feng clenched his fist towards Xianyuan Owl, who was not far away. Heavenly Water Domain. Walala! Before Xianyuan Owl could react, a huge water ball appeared out of thin air and enveloped him. At the same time, Qin Feng also rushed into the Heavenly Water Domain. His mental energy turned into sharp weapons and swept towards Xianyuan Owl. At the same time, he also rushed over. The force contained in his fist caused the surrounding water to ripple violently. However, just as he was about to hit Xianyuan Owl, a golden light suddenly bloomed from the latter's body. When Qin Feng's fist landed, he felt a powerful force erupting from Xianyuan Owl's body. Clang! 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 The mental energy weapons hit his body and made crisp clanging sounds. However, none of them broke through the golden light's defense. Qin Feng was just about to launch a second attack when he saw the golden light on Xianyuan Owl's body suddenly expand. Qin Feng's pupils shrank. He quickly retreated and left the Heavenly Water Domain. At the same time, a huge Heavenly Emperor's pagoda rose from the center of the Heavenly Water Domain. It directly broke through the Heavenly Water Domain. This was formed by spiritual energy and not the real Heavenly Emperor's pagoda. However, The degree of solidification was almost the same as the real Heavenly Emperor's pagoda. The huge Heavenly Emperor's pagoda stood there, flickering with golden light and emitting a majestic aura. It's mixed with the power of gold. Qin Feng was shocked. He was secretly amazed at Xian Yuan Ao's ability. He was actually able to fuse the gold god technique and the Heavenly Emperor's pagoda to this extent. His hands quickly moved in front of him. The fire god technique was activated. The power of fire surged and turned into a huge fire that enveloped Xian Yuan Ao. The power of fire didn't pose much of a threat to the Heavenly Emperor's pagoda formed by spiritual energy. However, it could suppress the power of gold and even strengthen his power of fire. Xian Yuan Shao also sensed the situation and hurriedly exploded. The explosive, ferocious force blasted the power of fire into nothingness. His face was slightly gloomy. His power of gold was completely restrained by Qin Feng's power of fire. He couldn't use it at all. With a whoosh, he waved his arm and a golden light burst out. At this moment, Qin Feng's skin tightened as he sensed danger. Under his gaze, the golden light suddenly expanded and turned into a huge Heavenly Emperor's clock. This is a fake Heavenly Emperor's clock. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. He instantly understood that this wasn't formed by spiritual energy. It was a fake Heavenly Emperor's clock. It was similar to the fake Heavenly Emperor's pagoda used by the Tiger Knight that day. However, although they were both fake, different people used them. The power was on a completely different level. After all, the difference between the Tiger Knight and Xian Yuan Ao was too great. The power contained in this fake Heavenly Emperor's clock was far greater than the fake Heavenly Emperor's pagoda used by the Tiger Knight that day. Chapter 361. Explosion attacked the fake Emperor Bell, and the savage peak collided fiercely in the air. The world seemed to be silent for a moment. Then, like a volcanic eruption, a destructive shockwave spread out crazily. Everywhere it passed, everything turned into nothingness. Even the clouds in the sky had been shaken clean. Everything was as poor as a church mouse. As the energy slowly dissipated, the fake Emperor Bell flew back, and the savage peak also fell into Qin Feng's hands. Both of them were gasping for breath. Clearly, in the continuous confrontation just now, they had consumed a lot of energy. They looked at each other with gloomy eyes. Clearly, they had underestimated each other's strength. Qin Feng had always thought that the 8 princes' strength was about the same. Even if there was a discrepancy, it would be within a small range. But now, it seemed that he was wrong. This 4th prince's strength was stronger than any of the princes he had killed. He was actually able to use the skills of 3 magical tools. The imperial capital had 4 heaven-shaking magical tools: Emperor Pagoda, Emperor Bell, Emperor Wheel, and Space Mirror. It was said that each of these magical tools had their own mysterious methods. Back when he had fought with the other princes, other than assassination, the other princes could only use one type of technique. However, the 4th prince had actually used 3 types of techniques in a short period of time: Emperor Pagoda, Emperor Bell, and Emperor Wheel. Even Qin Feng couldn't help but feel apprehensive. This was a very terrifying opponent. Similarly, Xian Yuan Ao also had the same mentality. He had used almost everything he knew, but he still couldn't defeat Qin Feng. "I didn't expect you to be so strong. No wonder they all fell at your hands," Xian Yuan Ao said with an indescribable smile on his face. "But since I was able to calculate your appearance, how could I not be prepared? The opportunity to kill you is very rare. I already missed it once. How could I miss it a second time?" Qin Feng's expression was tense. He spread out his spiritual power and opened his perception to the maximum. But he didn't discover any other experts lying in ambush nearby. "Your super powerhouses should have been held back by the Light Elves, right? Using psychological warfare against me is a bit childish." Xian Yuan Ao shook his head and smiled. He seemed to know that Qin Feng didn't believe him, so he didn't say anything. He just slowly stretched out his hand. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. The spiritual energy in his body continued to surge, spreading to his limbs and bones. A powerful force rippled out, and the air in his right palm quietly twisted. "Senior Emperor, do it!" As Xian Yuan Owl waved his arm, an extremely powerful spiritual energy pressure suddenly descended. Golden light flickered in the void, and a figure filled with extremely powerful spiritual energy fluctuations slowly emerged. Elder Huang. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. Even such an important figure from the royal clan had appeared. Xu Ling and Jing Wui's hearts shook. A ninth-stage heavenly master was enough to obliterate everyone present. The Nightwalker breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, because of Qin Feng's appearance, their situation had been reversed, but with the appearance of a super master from the two-legged monster's side, everything had come to an end. These guys really can't be trusted. A gloomy light flashed across his eyes as he became even more wary of Xian Yuan Owl's group. They had always thought that the other side had only brought 3 ninth-stage heavenly masters. They hadn't expected there to be another one. The Nightwalker even wondered how many masters they had brought with them to the 100,000 Bear Mountains. He couldn't help but be on guard. 9th-stage heavenly masters were all super masters. Once this level of masters reached a certain level, it would be a disaster for any of the clans in the 100,000 Bear Mountains. As the Nightwalker's thoughts raced, Elder Huang attacked Qin Feng, his figure appearing beside Qin Feng like a ghost. This time, he didn't act carelessly. Because he was worried that Qin Feng would act like that day, he had used his full strength to cripple his cultivation. A 9th-stage heavenly master attacking with all his strength was naturally a devastating disaster for Qin Feng, so he understood that any method he used was useless. So, looking at Elder Huang, who had suddenly appeared beside him, Yang Kai simply stretched out his right hand, and in the next moment, an endless black qi gushed out from his palm and surrounded Elder Huang. At first glance, it looked like Elder Huang had rushed in. Immediately after, a pitiful scream rang out as a figure was sent flying backwards, his body covered in black qi, as if he was being burned by black flames. Elder Huang screamed, his eyes filled with horror. "Boy, what is that thing in your hand?" He couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been dragged into the endless darkness. On the Imperial capital side, Xian Yuan Owl and the others were shocked. They couldn't believe that Elder Huang was injured by Qin Feng, even though he had used his full strength. How is this possible? If he had such strength, why would he need to fight with them? While they were absent-minded, none of them noticed that the space not too far away from Elder Huang, who was retreating, explosively rippled slightly, and then a petite figure floated up into appearance. His small body trembled slightly as he directly shot toward Elder Huang, who was a short distance away. His small fist was tightly clenched as a frightening strength was brewing within it. A little girl dares to be so arrogant. Elder Huang sneered as he looked at the explosive figure. Although he knew that she had terrifying strength after transforming, it wasn't worth mentioning before she transformed. Elder Huang's pale and shriveled hand suddenly trembled. Suddenly, golden spiritual energy gushed out and condensed into a golden snake that was as thick as a bucket. With a flick of his finger, the golden snake shot out. Although his body was empty due to his injuries, he was still a super powerhouse in the 9th heavenly stage. Even if it was just a casual attack, it wasn't something that someone in the small heavenly stage could block. The golden snake instantly shot forward. Feeling the violent energy contained in the former's body, Big Flower Explosion's face turned slightly solemn. She slowly opened her small fist, and her 5 fingers grabbed at the golden snake that was shooting toward her. Bang! As the cry sounded, the 5 fingers of the Great Flower Explosion clenched tightly. Immediately, an invisible ripple spread out in a lightning-like manner. The space 10 meters in front of him appeared to have been kneaded into a ball by an extremely frightening strength. The golden color that had coincidentally passed through this place was also crushed into pieces by the shrinking space. After getting rid of the entanglement of the golden snake, the tip of the Great Flower Explosion's foot pressed on the empty air. There seemed to be a weak spear glow that flashed and disappeared. Soon after, her petite body appeared in front of Elder Huang in a ghost-like manner. She twisted her waist, and her delicate leg drew a half-moon arc as she violently kicked at the ladder's head. The explosive figure's leg was slender and weak. It looked as if it would be broken with a gentle grip. However, if anyone overlooked the terrifying power contained within, then they would probably be taught a painful lesson. When Elder Huang fought with others, he naturally would not make such a low-level mistake. When he first saw the big flower explode his golden snake with a single punch, he knew that this seemingly weak little girl, even if she did not transform, had an extremely terrifying, strange strength. Therefore, he naturally couldn't choose to ignore or underestimate the explosive figure's close-range attack. The shriveled hand quickly danced, and a surge of golden energy suddenly surged out from his body. In the end, it condensed into a golden light shield on the left side of his body. Chapter 362. Forced Retreat Bang. The foot of the great flower explosion was accompanied by a low and deep sonic boom as it violently smashed onto the golden light barrier. Immediately, a muffled explosion rang out. Immediately, ripples began to rapidly vibrate on the golden light barrier before it exploded into pieces. After breaking Elder Huang's defense with one kick, Big Flower Explosion's figure was also unstable. However, another strange, illusory spear appeared under her feet. Borrowing this force, Big Flower Explosion stabilized her figure. Her figure flashed, and directly flashed into Elder Huang's arms. Her slender arms shook rapidly, and afterimages appeared. All of them carried an unparalleled wind as they smashed onto Elder Huang's chest. Elder Huang did not expect this girl to be so strange. Without spiritual energy, she could actually fight in the air for a long time. Even for powerhouses like them, it would be difficult for them to stay in the air for such a long time without spiritual energy. Therefore, in the initial moment, he was ruthlessly smashed by the Big Flower Explosion's small fist a few times. That terrifying force finally caused his expression to change a little. Such a terrifying force made him feel fearful. The others looked at Big Flower Explosion in the sky. Except for a few people like Qin Feng who knew Big Flower Explosion's background, the others were extremely shocked. Especially the two people from the Light and Dark Elf clan. Obviously, they found it hard to imagine that a little girl could explode with such terrifying power. She could even force a 9th-level Heavenly Realm powerhouse to retreat. Clang! Another punch smashed on Elder Huang's body. The latter's body staggered, and blood flowed out from his mouth. Before Big Flower Explosion could rejoice, an even more surging and rich golden energy burst out from Elder Huang's body. That momentum was so strong that it even forced Big Flower Explosion to retreat a few steps. Elder Huang finally passed the empty strength period, and his strength gradually recovered. Her figure was forced back. Before Big Flower Explosion could react, she heard a gloomy roar suddenly ring in her ears. Go to hell. As the roar fell, the wind in the sky suddenly blew. However, at this moment, a bloody light soared into the sky, accompanied by a sharp spear. Therefore, everyone present was stunned. A glaring scarlet spear light blossomed in the sky like a blood-red firework. Amidst its beauty, there was a sharpness that made one's heart palpitate. Everyone in this area was stunned as they stared at the scene in front of them. This scene had clearly exceeded their expectations. No one had expected that Elder Huang, who should have been in absolute control of the situation and would not allow the slightest accident to occur, would actually be forced back by Qin Feng and then beaten up by a little girl. Finally, when he was about to explode, one of his arms was swept away by a spear. This was too tragic. A super powerhouse didn't even have time to display his might before he was defeated one after another. The blood-red light in the sky gradually scattered in front of the stunned gazes that filled the sky. Soon after, a human figure once again appeared in front of everyone's eyes. When that human figure appeared, sounds of cold air being sucked in immediately rang out in this world. It rose and fell one after another, and it didn't stop for a long time. That figure was naturally Elder Huang. However, at this moment, his face was so gloomy that it was frightening, because at his chest, his clothes were torn apart, revealing his chest. At this moment, there were actually quite a few bloody scars on his chest, caused by the big flower explosion's attack. What made the corner of people's mouths twitch was that one of his arms was actually chopped off. It was too inconceivable. At this moment, even Xianyuan Owl was absent-minded. This was a super powerhouse at the 9th level heavenly stage, and he was so easily beaten to such a state, and even chopped off one of his arms. Elder Huang's eyes were gloomy, and he was about to go crazy. He lowered his head and looked at the scars on his chest, then looked at the severed arm that fell to the ground. His entire body couldn't help but tremble, and his face was burning. Although this kind of injury wasn't much to him, and the severed arm could be reforged with his powerful strength. However, it was undoubtedly a fierce slap to his face. A dignified 9th level heavenly stage existence, an important figure of the imperial family, was injured so miserably in the hands of a few juniors who hadn't even reached the small heavenly stage, causing him to lose face. Little bastards, Elder Huang's voice was trembling. His eyes were incomparably ferocious as he looked at Tan Xian and the big flower explosion. He couldn't wait to tear the two of them into pieces. Today, I will make you beg for death. Elder Huang roared, and his figure rushed out. In a flash, he appeared in front of the big flower explosion. With a flick of his finger, the space in front of him was directly shattered. A terrifying ripple filled with destructive power swept towards the big flower explosion at lightning speed. Suddenly, a black light shot out and shattered the ripple. Then, Qin Feng appeared in front of the big flower explosion and extended his right hand towards Elder Huang. Although Elder Huang was furious, he didn't lose his mind. He quickly dodged, stared at Qin Feng, and shouted, "What kind of power is this?" Qin Feng was too lazy to bother with him, and the corner of his mouth carried a mocking smile. Elder Huang's old face trembled, and he snorted, "This power shouldn't belong to you. Don't think that just because you can control this kind of power, you can really fight with people of our level. Why do you care where this power comes from, and whether I can control it at will? As long as it can make you afraid, that's enough." Qin Feng sneered. Seeing this, Elder Huang's old eyes narrowed, and his figure suddenly floated. He knew that Qin Feng had a powerful power in his body, but it seemed that he couldn't fully utilize it. Just now, he was careless, and he believed that as long as he was careful, he should be able to deal with it. However, just when he was about to make a move, suddenly, an extremely tyrannical spiritual energy fluctuation exploded in the distance. Oh no, the experts of the Light Elves are here. Elder Huang's complexion changed. With a wave of his hand, spiritual energy surged and swept up Xianyuan Owl and the others, and then quickly left. The Nightwalker was also extremely depressed. They were so close, but the experts of the Light Elves were here, and they could only retreat. After forcing these people to retreat, Qin Feng also heaved a sigh of relief. He and Tan Xian looked at each other and shook their heads with bitter smiles. They had indeed left, but because they were worried about Jing Wui, they returned in the end. They knew that Xianyuan Owl's group of 4 dared to deal with them, so they must have something to rely on. They were afraid that there was a 9th stage Heaven Realm expert following them, so at that time, only Qin Feng showed himself, while Tan Xian and the big exploding flower hid in the dark. Qin Feng originally wanted to use the power of the demon Eye to seriously injure Elder Huang, and then let the big exploding flower and Tan Xian kill him at the crucial moment. However, a powerhouse of this level was too powerful and wouldn't be so easy to kill. Chapter 363. Help! The return of Qin Feng and the rest resolved Su Xiaochun's crisis, but the Light Elves' crisis was still unresolved. The Dark Elves allied with the Imperial capital and coerced some spiritual beasts, causing their power to surpass that of the Light Elves. Even the Guardian of Light could not stop them. If not for Qin Feng giving the Elven Death order to the Light Elves, they would have lost this battle. Only the Mother of Elves had the Elven Death order. The light elves had intimidated the dark elves for a short period of time, but it was not a long-term solution. After all, the mother of elves had fallen for so many years, and their respect and reverence for her had diminished greatly. When the dark elves reacted, they would definitely lead their army to attack. Panic spread among the light elves. Some even suggested going to the outside world to ally with the two-legged monsters. Moreover, there were spiritual beasts in this area that were close to the light elves. They could also ally with the spiritual beasts to fight against the dark elves. The light elves' higher-ups were also discussing this matter. Chief, this matter cannot be delayed any longer. If we stick to the old rules, we will be destroyed by the dark elves. That's right, Chief. Compared to being destroyed, breaking some rules is nothing. Our main mission is to unify the elven race. Many of the higher-ups were inclined to ally with external forces because they alone could not stop the dark elves' attack. However, there were also some who disagreed. If we ally with external forces, we will have to give up a lot of territory. This is our territory. If we let other races in, it will only be beneficial to the elven race's long-term development. That's right. Moreover, even if we want to ally, we cannot do it in a short period of time. The dark elves will not give us the time. In my opinion, we should fight with them. Even if we die in battle, we have to protect the pride and dignity of the Orthodox elves. One side believed that allying with external forces could resolve their crisis, while the other side believed that external forces were not reliable. If they did so, they would be no different from the dark elves. Because of this, the two sides argued endlessly, and they even quarreled until their faces turned red. Shu Changkong sat at the head of the table with a gloomy face. He was considering the strategy of both sides. Should they ally or fight to the death? He was the leader of a clan and had to consider many things. He couldn't just look at what was in front of him. Qin Feng was also sitting among them. Because of the Elven Death Order, he was allowed to participate in the Elven discussions. He lowered his head in contemplation. To be honest, he was more inclined to ally with the other races. After all, survival was the most important thing. If he didn't even have his life, then all he said was just empty talk. Only by living could one create a future and create a legend. If one died, there would be nothing. It wasn't that the rules couldn't be broken, the key was how to break them. The light elves were already at a critical juncture of life and death. If they continued to silently abide by the rules, they would only end up being exterminated. However, he also knew that he didn't have much say in the elf tribe. The only reason he could participate in the discussion was because of the Elf Death Order, so he didn't say anything. But if he didn't say anything, he wouldn't be able to avoid it. Shu Changkong looked around and finally stopped at Qin Feng. He asked with a smile, "Qin Feng, what do you think?" No one thought that Shu Changkong would actually ask for an outsider's opinion when the light elves were at a critical juncture of life and death. They all looked at him in puzzlement, and then looked at Qin Feng. Patriarch, he's a two-legged monster. He might not sincerely consider the issue from the standpoint of our elf tribe. An old elf said. He obviously had a deep prejudice against Qin Feng. No, against the two-legged monster. Shu Changkong waved his hand and stopped that person. He looked at Qin Feng and said with a smile, "Qin Feng, after all, you have obtained the approval of the Mother of Elves. If you have any opinions, you can say them." When Shu Changkong mentioned the Mother of Elves, some elves who wanted to say something immediately stopped. They didn't dare to say anything and only secretly shook their heads. A selfish two-legged monster who only thinks about himself. What kind of good opinion can he give? However, there were still some old elves who whispered. Qin Feng smiled and ignored them. He pondered for a while and said, "I think the Grand Elder's words are very reasonable. Even if we abandon everything and agree to ally with the other races, it's too late now. The Dark Elves must have guessed this, so they won't give you too much time. So, the suggestion of allying with the other races can be dismissed. If we want to get through this crisis, we have to start from the inside." Hearing this, Shu Changkong's eyes lit up. "What do you mean?" "Of course it's the Mother of Elves." Qin Feng smiled and looked at everyone. He said softly, "In terms of overall strength, you don't have the advantage. If we ally with the other races, We don't have enough time. The only way is the Mother of Elves. If the Mother of Elves can make a move or show herself, I think this will be more intimidating than any other method. That's a good idea. The Grand Elder nodded, then frowned. But the Mother of Elves has passed away many years ago. How can we make her show herself? Moreover, it's not the time to worship the ancestors, so we can't enter the ancestral land. As he said that, he suddenly paused and looked at Qin Feng with bright eyes. Everyone else stared at Qin Feng without blinking. We still need Qin Feng's help in this matter, the Grand Elder said, and everyone else nodded. Qin Feng had entered the ancestral land and received the Elven Death Order from the Mother of Elves. This might be an opportunity for them, and only he could enter the ancestral land. Kid, don't boast. The Mother of Elves is already asleep. It's difficult to wake her up. The Demon Eye's voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feng's mind. Qin Feng's smile froze, and he quickly asked, "What's going on? Didn't you help me and the Mother of Elves last time? That's a trace of the Mother of Elves' obsession. Now that you've obtained the inheritance of the Divine with technique, that trace of obsession has naturally disappeared. What should we do?" Qin Feng frowned. He was the one who started this topic, and he was also the one who came up with this idea. The Demon Eye was silent for a moment, then said, "It's not that there's no way at all, but it's a little risky." "What way?" Qin Feng quickly asked. "That little girl has the purest elven blood flowing in her body. Using their blood connection, we might be able to awaken the Mother of Elves' consciousness," the Demon Eye said. "How confident are you?" "It's hard to say. If the Mother of Elves is in a shallow sleep, there's a 60 to 70% chance of awakening me. If she's in a deep sleep, there's probably only a 20 to 30% chance. So little." Qin Feng clenched his fist. After all, the Mother of Elves has passed away many years ago. She relied on the force of nature to preserve a trace of her consciousness. In the end, she's already dead. To awaken her consciousness, and consciousness is naturally extremely difficult, the Demon Eye said. Seeing the change in Qin Feng's expression, everyone thought that he was thinking, so they didn't say anything. After a while, the Grand Elder tentatively asked in a low voice, "Qin Feng, are you willing to help?" Chapter 364. Entering the ancestral land, again seeing that Qin Feng had agreed, all the elves heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he could summon the Mother of the Elves, not only would the current crisis be resolved, but they would also be able to complete the unification of the elves after countless years of division. "Who does Qin Feng need to help?" Shu Changkong asked. "Your princess, Shu Xiaochun." Seeing that everyone was puzzled, Qin Feng said, "Shu Xiaochun has the purest elven bloodline and is the closest existence to the Mother of the Elves. Only she can awaken the Mother of the Elves." Hearing that, Shu Changkong looked troubled. "Qin Feng, I'm afraid you don't know that the Mother of the Elves is sleeping in an important place for us elves. It's the ancestral land, but it's also a place of great danger. No elves are allowed to enter unless it's the time for ancestor worship. Otherwise, there will be a great disaster. Don't worry about that, clan leader Shu. Regardless of whether I succeed or not, I can bring Shu Xiaochun in and bring her out safely," Qin Feng said. Shu Changkong nodded. "But there's one thing I need to remind everyone. Although Shu Xiaochun has the purest elven bloodline, she hasn't activated her elven bloodline. So, I'm not sure if she can awaken the Mother of the Elves," Qin Feng said. "Qin Feng, you can give it a try. Success or failure will depend on whether the heavens want our elves to die. If we can survive this disaster, Qin Feng will be the benefactor of our elves. If you need help in the future, the elves will do our best to help." "Clan leader Shu, you're too serious. The ancestors of our two races were once close friends. As descendants, we should help each other," Qin Feng said. Having the elves behind him in the future would be a great help to him, so he naturally had to say some nice words. Of course, apart from Jing Wui, this was also one of the reasons why he left and returned. No matter what, he owed the Mother of the Elves a favor. His words made some of the old elves feel ashamed. They had been mocking him for being a two-legged monster, but he was still helping them with everything he had. After coming out of the Great Council Hall, Qin Feng found Tan Xian and the others and told them about his plan. Do you have the confidence to awaken the Mother of Fairies? Tan Xian asked. Qin Feng shook his head and sighed. This is the last way. We can only try. Su Xiaoqun and I will definitely take some time to enter the ancestral land and awaken the Mother of Fairies. During this time, you must be careful. After a pause, he suddenly approached the two of them and whispered, if there's a need, you two can secretly leave with big popcorn. Don't worry, the elves are not allowed to enter the ancestral land during the non-ancestral worship period. If that happens, I will find a way to take her away from here. With that, Qin Feng patted Jing Wui's shoulder and said in a deep voice, this is the best outcome in the worst-case scenario. Jing Wui nodded and said, don't worry, as long as I protect my sister, I can accept anything else. Qin Feng was stunned for a moment, then said seriously, Jing Wui, she is not your sister. I hope you can recognize her as soon as possible. I don't want you to fall deeper and deeper. Ha ha! Jing Wui raised his head and laughed. Of course I know. This is my god-sister. Seeing him pretending to be indifferent, Qin Feng sighed and patted him heavily on the shoulder. He left this place and did not say anything else. Jing Wui looked at him and shook his head with a smile. He said to himself, I'm not that weak. I can naturally distinguish between the real and the fake. Seeing this, Tan Xian shook his head slightly and muttered, the longer you wear the mask, the harder it is to take it off. If you mistake the fake for the real for a long time, it will be difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Jing Wui's body trembled and his gaze gradually deepened. After leaving the place, Qin Feng found Su Xiaoqun. The latter had obviously heard the news and was excitedly packing her luggage. Qin Feng walked into the tree hole and saw Su Xiaoqun, who was humming a fairy song while packing her clothes. She was so excited that she looked like a rabbit that had been injected with chicken blood. He couldn't help but remind her helplessly, we are entering the ancestral land to awaken the Mother of Fairies, not going out for a vacation. Ah, Qin Feng, you're here. Su Xiaoqun was startled. When she saw Qin Feng come in, she happily pounced on him and hung on him like a big monkey, her big eyes blinking. Perhaps it was because she was close to nature as a fairy, but she had an innocence that others didn't have. Her big blinking eyes were so innocent that they seemed to be able to penetrate one's soul. Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He had to admit that Su Xiaoqun was a beauty in the truest sense of the word. She had an oval face, willowy eyebrows, delicate facial features, and a youthful and lively aura. There was also a natural freshness to her. Anyone who saw her would be stunned. However, when Qin Feng saw the wings on her back and her pointy ears, all of those feelings instantly disappeared. If you weren't a fairy, you would definitely be a little fairy who could bring disaster to a country. Qin Feng secretly shook his head. It was a pity that she was so beautiful but not human. Qin Feng, you saved me twice. I haven't had the chance to thank you yet, and now you're bringing me to see the Mother of Fairies. I really don't know how to thank you, Su Xiaoqun said happily. First, don't be in a hurry to thank me for saving your life twice. It's fine as long as you don't forget about it. It's not too late to repay me in the future when you have the ability. Second, I'm asking you to awaken the Mother of Fairies, not bring you to see the Mother of Fairies. Do you understand? Third, there's a difference between men and women. Can you come down first? Qin Feng spread his hands helplessly. Although he didn't have any feelings for her, there were some things that he couldn't control in close contact. Su Xiaoqun's cheeks turned red as she realized that they were too intimate. She quickly jumped down and spat softly. Taking advantage of me? You're really taking advantage of me. Qin Feng was speechless. Why was this girl the same as the flower demon? She was the one who threw herself at him, but in the end, she still said that he took advantage of her. However, he couldn't be bothered with it. He had long been trained by the flower demon to be a scapegoat that surpassed ordinary people. Under the lead of Shu Changkong and the other high-level fairies, Qin Feng openly walked into the ancestral land of the fairies this time. Chief Shu, before I come out, you must guard this place. Qin Feng said seriously. Qin Feng, don't worry. Shu Changkong nodded slightly, then said, I'll leave Xiaochun in your hands. Daddy, big brother, don't worry. I'll definitely awaken the mother of fairies. Su Xiaochun clenched her small fists and said confidently. Qin Feng looked at the many fairies who had hope and anticipation in their eyes and said loudly, Everyone, wait for our good news. After waving his hand, Qin Feng didn't stay any longer and led Su Xiaochun to the ancestral land. Qin Feng. Suddenly, Shu Ling caught up to Qin Feng and whispered, If you fail, don't come out for a while. Qin Feng was stunned and looked at her in surprise. Chapter 365. Celestial Spirit. Mark hearing Shu Ling's words. Qin Feng's heart trembled. Thinking about it carefully, his heart trembled. This Shu Changkong was truly a schemer. Shu Changkong had stood his ground and allowed him to participate in the elf tribe's meeting and speak. Shu Changkong had seen through his thoughts. As the leader of the tribe, he couldn't ask him to bring Shu Xiaochun into the ancestral land. That would seem like protecting his daughter. However, if he brought Shu Xiaochun in with the excuse of awakening the mother of the elves, no one would gossip. In fact, Shu Changkong already knew that this was the only way. He just wanted to use the meeting to make Qin Feng say it. Even if Qin Feng didn't ask to bring Shu Xiaochun in, Shu Changkong would have used her pure elf bloodline as an excuse to let Shu Xiaochun in. It seemed like he was staking everything on the elf tribe, but it was actually to protect his daughter better. If he succeeded, the crisis would naturally be resolved. What if he failed? The Dark Elves wouldn't dare to enter the ancestral land. No matter what, nothing would happen to Shu Xiaochun. Leader Shu, you are very scheming, Qin Feng said in a low voice. His tone was cold. He was naturally very dissatisfied with being schemed against. Shu Ling smiled bitterly when he heard Qin Feng's words. Father has no other choice. Xiaochun is the most qualified to become the mother of the elves. As long as she doesn't die, there is a possibility of reviving the elf tribe in the future. However, he can't let the tribe know about this. He has to protect Xiaochun and give the tribe hope. He has to let them know that there is still hope. As a father and a leader, he has done enough. No matter how big a mistake a father makes for his children, no one has the right to criticize him. Qin Feng nodded slightly. The anger in his heart dissipated bit by bit. Yes, a parent would really give up everything for their children. In order to protect his daughter, Shu Changkong tried his best to protect his tribe. In this regard, he was a qualified father and a competent leader. What reason did he have to criticize him? It's not easy for your father either. Qin Feng sighed softly as he thought of his parents, who he didn't even know if they were dead or alive. Then he said, Try your best to hold on. Shu Ling nodded and said, If you really can't hold on, Father has also made plans to send your friends out. You don't have to worry about this. Thank you. Qin Feng nodded. Thank you. Thank you. Shu Ling thanked him twice. The first thank you is for everything you've done for the Light Elves. The second. Shu Ling looked at Shu Xiaochun, and after a moment of silence, she said softly, Thank you very much. Qin Feng knew what he meant and nodded seriously. Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, I'll keep her safe. With that, Qin Feng didn't stay any longer and entered the stone forest array with Su Xiaochun. Unlike that night, this time, Qin Feng could see the entire stone forest formation. Stones of all shapes and sizes were placed in a very strange position, and as they entered, a large amount of thick fog would rise from the stone forest formation. However, he had the demonic eyes, so the stone forest array naturally couldn't stop him. I say, your mother of light elves is really siding with outsiders. You made a great array to block your clansmen, but ended up benefiting outsiders. Qin Feng said. He really couldn't understand why the mother of light elves would do such a thing. You're not allowed to say that. Shu Xiaochun raised her small fist toward Qin Feng and said, The mighty mother of light elves' way of doing things is actually something that ordinary two-legged monsters like you can guess. Shu Xiaochun, let me tell you, if I hear the word two-legged monsters from your mouth again, do you believe that I won't leave you here? Let me tell you, your father and the others won't be able to come in, so no one can protect you. If you anger me, don't blame me for doing something to you first." Qin Feng pretended to be fierce and said. Shu Xiaochun was scared by Qin Feng and stood there blankly. Her big eyes were filled with dense fog, but she didn't dare to say anything. Looking at Shu Xiaochun, who was scared to tears, he touched his face and muttered to himself, "Am I that scary?" This little girl was much more naive and pure than the flower demon. She would be scared easily. That woman would fight you to the death. Thinking of the flower demon, Qin Feng couldn't help but feel depressed. The three of them had left by ascending the path of heaven. So what was the situation now? Qin Feng quickly collected his thoughts. Seeing Shu Xiaochun standing there respectfully, he shook his head, walked over, and said, "I was just scaring you just now, but you keep saying that I'm a two-legged monster. This is indeed disrespectful. Do you understand?" Shu Xiaochun's eyes widened, and sparkling tears swirled in her eyes. This made Qin Feng feel like a bad uncle bullying a little lowly. "All right, let's go quickly." He led Shu Xiaochun through the stone forest array, and not far away, the statue of the Mother of Light Elves appeared in front of them. "This is the Mother of Light Elves?" Shu Xiaochun said in a daze. This was her first time entering the ancestral land. Qin Feng nodded and secretly contacted the demon eye. "Oldemo, how do we make her elven bloodline resonate with the Mother of Light Elves? Let her circulate the Heart Sutra of the Light Elves. I'll try to activate part of her bloodline." Qin Feng nodded and then told Shu Xiaochun the method. The latter nodded, sat down cross-legged, and circulated the Heart Sutra of the Light Elves. Layer after layer of light green energy appeared on the surface of her body. A ray of black light shot out from Qin Feng's palm and entered Shu Xiaochun's body, following which traces of blood qi flowed out from her body. Under the cover of the black light, it quickly turned into a pale green color. It was also at this moment that Qin Feng's spirit shook and the surrounding environment changed. "It's a success." He was delighted. The two of them appeared in the green world. "Lord Mother of Light Elves, now that the Light Elves are facing extinction, please help us save the Light Elves," Qin Feng said. Shu Xiaochun looked at this world curiously, and after hearing Qin Feng's voice, she immediately understood. She knelt down and said sincerely, "Great Lord Mother of Light Elves, the future generations are incompetent, and the Light Elves are about to collapse. Please protect us, Lord Mother of Light Elves, and save the Light Elves from extinction." The green world was silent for a moment, and then there seemed to be a soft sigh. Then two rays of light burst out and instantly rushed into Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun's glabella. Thousands of reincarnations, seeing the flower of similarity again. Infinity, will they be the same as us? Back then, you also helped me cast the light elven root like this. Qin Feng could not hear what the Mother of Light Elves was saying, but he felt his body heat up, and there was a fire in his body that was about to burst out. He was shocked, and he knew what this was. "Lord Mother of Light Elves, what are you doing?" Qin Feng suppressed the heat in his body and said with difficulty, "Quickly stop, or it will lead to an irreversible situation." Celestial Spirit Mark, Dao Yin Mode. If you want to activate the Celestial Spirit Mark, this is a stage that you must accept. You can do as you wish and go with the flow. This is the path of Light Elves. Qin Feng's head swelled, and his eyes were bloodshot. The blazing energy in his body was like a volcanic eruption, and it almost engulfed him. Shu Xiaochun, this is the Mother of Light Elves test. Pull yourself together. Before Qin Feng could finish his words, a beautiful figure fell into his arms, and a fragrant wind attacked him. The softness on his lips completely swallowed the rationality that he was trying to maintain. Chapter 366. War of Light and Dark in the territory of the Light Elves. All the elves were ready to fight the Dark Elves. In the distant sky, there was a black dot. Then, the black dot became bigger and bigger. In the end, it was like a dark cloud, and a vigorous spiritual energy fluctuation spread out. In front of the forest, Countless figures flickered, and the whole forest was filled with a strong, murderous aura. Even if the two sides hadn't fought yet, the smell of blood could be smelled. In the sky above the territory of the light elves, white light spread out, and figures appeared. They released strong spiritual energy fluctuations, blocking the spiritual energy pressure of the dark elves. Dark Pooh, do you really want the light elves and dark elves to disappear completely? Shu Changkong asked. In the distance, a black light flickered, and a middle-aged man in a black robe walked out. His face was as white as jade, and he had a faint smile. He looked at Shu Changkong and said, "Brother Shu, the light and dark elves have been divided for thousands of years. It's time to unify them. Our elf clan used to be one of the strongest overlords, but now we can only stay here. If we want to regain our position as overlords, we must unify the elf clan." "Brother Shu, you don't have the courage, but I do." Dark Pooh smiled. Shu Changkong's face darkened, allying with the two-legged monsters, promising other spiritual beast clans benefits, and attacking our own clan. Is this your plan? The winner is king, and the loser is in the wrong. As long as I win, the history of the elf clan will be written in my hands. The future generations of elves will only respect and look up to me. During the time when the elf clan was divided, a powerful elf unified the elf clan and regained the position of overlord. And that person is me, Dark Pooh. You'll only bring the elf clan to destruction if you cling to the old rules like this. Dark Pooh looked at Shu Changkong, and he could see the madness in his bloodshot eyes. "Brother Shu, the times are changing, and some rules should be broken. Otherwise, the elf clan will only be digging its own grave. My promise is still valid. As long as the light elf clan is merged into the dark elf clan, you will still have a lot of weight in the entire elf clan. You will be second only to me and above everyone else." Shu Changkong sneered and said, "Why don't you ask the dark elves to give up the power of darkness and return to the light elves? That's not the power of the elves to begin with. If you return, I can let bygones be bygones." Hearing this, Anpu laughed loudly and shook his head. "Brother Shu, this is the difference between you and me. How can those who want to achieve great things stick to small details? Moreover, this power comes from the mother of the fairies, so it belongs to the fairy clan. The current situation is clear. If you continue to persist, the light elf clan will be completely destroyed. This is not something I want to see. You disrespected the mother of the elves and stole the power of darkness suppressed by the mother of the elves. At that time, you betrayed the elves. Now, you don't deserve to be called the elves." Dark Pooh's smile slowly faded. "Brother Shu, are you really going to be stubborn? Think about your clan. The elves are the spirits of nature. How can we be tainted by the secular world? Anpu, even if you can unify the elves, are you still the elves?" Shu Changkong shouted. "Are there any cowards among us orthodox elves?" "No." Many light elves shouted in unison. "Are there any cowards?" "No." Those who are lowly and don't dare to admit their identity. Or are you going to fight to the death as elves? Tell me, as Orthodox elves, what is your choice? Fight, fight, fight. Countless light elves shouted hot-bloodedly. Their chests were filled with high fighting spirit, causing their faces to turn red and their blood to boil. Shu Changkong looked at the light elf warriors who were filled with fighting spirit and said to Anpu, "This is the elves' answer." Anpu's face gradually became gloomy. "Since you have foolishly chosen to walk towards destruction, then don't blame me. The future elves won't remember how proud and orthodox you were. In their eyes, you are only opposing the unification of the elves. There will be no place for you in the elves' ancestral hall. Dark elves, follow me and kill. Revive the elves." Anpu waved his hand and said in a cold voice, "Those who don't accept, kill them on the spot. Kill." The two elves' eyes were red. In the vast forest, they fiercely clashed. As soon as they came into contact, rows of elves fell. Blood stained the ground. Life seemed incomparably cheap at this moment. All the elves' eyes were red with killing intent. They desperately waved their blades and cut down their opponents. Chi! The chaotic battle began in the territory of the Light Elves. The smell of blood filled the air. The elves of both sides were red with killing intent. The sound of swords entering bodies was especially ear-piercing. A wave of sparks erupted as the blade that was dyed in fresh blood collided. Immediately, a figure flashed. The low, deep sound that was emitted when the sharp blade slashed past caused one's hair to stand on end as it sounded within this dense forest that was filled with killing sounds. The birds and beasts nearby all got up in fright and fled into the distance. Although the Dark Elves had the absolute advantage, they still had the troops from the Imperial capital. There were also spirit beasts from other races. Therefore, they didn't coordinate their attacks. But the Light Elves were different. They were a race with tacit understanding cultivated over many years. Moreover, they were in a life-and-death situation. Therefore, their fighting strength was far beyond normal. After the initial collapse was stopped, even if the Light Elves didn't have the advantage, the Dark Elves couldn't break through the Light Elves' defense. However, anyone could see that this kind of strong defense would eventually be shattered by the heat of the battle. The defeat of the Light Elves was only a matter of time. The interior of the dense forest had already completely turned into a bloody meat grinder. Blades and swords clashed as miserable screams rang out incessantly. Bright red fresh blood splattered in all directions, dyeing the numerous large ancient trees into a red curtain. A pungent bloody stench slowly spread. Tan Xian and Jing Wui shuttled through the chaotic battlefield, looking for Xianyuan Owl, Ouyang Yi, and the others. Just like the Light Elves and Dark Elves, there was great hatred between them. Whoosh! A strong wind blew. Tan Xian twisted his body and thrust his spear at a tricky angle. With a boom, the force spread out, sending the Light Elves fighting nearby, flying. Although they were all in the spirit detecting realm, even small heavenly realm experts didn't dare to get close to them. Xianyuan Xiantian looked at Ouyang Yi, who was fighting with Jing Wui, and asked with a smile, "That person didn't come? Did he escape?" Tan Xian looked at him coldly and shook his head with a sneer. "Do you think you have everything under control? Be careful of your failure." We have just cooperated with the Dark Elves. Naturally, we have a way to prevent them from burning the bridge after crossing the river. I don't need to trouble you to remind me of this." Xianyuan Xiantian raised his sword and attacked. Think about your situation carefully. In the sky, energy surged. Blurry figures flashed. Those were the super experts of the 9th Heavenly Realm fighting. As time passed, the battle became more and more intense. A strong smell of blood permeated the air, causing the entire area to appear as though it was raining blood. Chapter 367. Silence at the bottom. Qin Feng, be gentler. It hurts. That's good. It means you're not dead yet. Then be gentler. My body is about to be melted by you. It's my first time, and I'm not used to controlling the fire. Bear with it. It'll be over soon. Sigh, after being burned by you, it's actually quite comfortable. I feel like all the pores on my body have opened up. It's warm and comfortable. That's because you're just lying there and not doing anything. I'm the one doing all the hard work. Hee, just suffer a little. I'll make it up to you in the future. Sigh, be gentler. This kind of thing has to be done step by step. It can't be too intense. In the green world, Su Xiaochun was lying on the ground with a joyful expression. Beside her sat a figure who was groping her body with all his might. One could see the 2 hands that were slowly moving around Su Xiaochun's body. There was a faint white light that could be seen with the naked eye. The space around the white light was quietly distorting. Under the 2 palms, a layer of faint white light appeared on Su Xiaochun's body and slowly moved around her body. Everywhere it passed, Su Xiaochun's delicate body would tremble slightly. However, there was no pain on her face. On the contrary, she seemed to be enjoying it. Qin Feng, what kind of fire is this? Why does it feel so good to burn? Qin Feng's face was filled with black lines. You're feeling good, but why don't you see me sweating all over? He was extremely depressed. He could have ignored everything. According to the mother of the spirits, he could have just gone with the flow. He could have just pressed down on her. Why did he have to control himself and climb up to control Su Xiaochun, who was constantly climbing on his body. Her eyes were closed, and she couldn't remember anything. However, those feelings and images were constantly stimulating his mind. I can't think about it anymore, Qin Feng muttered. He activated the ancient desolate spirit flame and burned the blazing energy in Su Xiaochun's body bit by bit. He didn't know why it was like this, but he knew that the mother of the spirits wouldn't harm him, let alone her descendants. Previously, he had almost lost his guard. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the ancient desolate spiritual flame in his body trembled, allowing him to regain his consciousness. Only the ancient desolate spiritual flame could slowly burn away this blazing energy. For this reason, he had to put in a lot of patience. Staying calm was child's play for him. Not only did he have to control himself, but he also had to stop Su Xiaochun from climbing onto his body again and again. It took a lot of effort to extinguish the blazing energy in her body, but Su Xiaochun had reached her limit. She didn't have the slightest restraint and appeared in front of Qin Feng, making him almost lose control again. Finally, he managed to restrain Su Xiaochun, and the situation was gradually reversed. He had also expended a large amount of energy to control the ancient desolate spirit flame, and sent it into Su Xiaochun's body to burn away the blazing energy that could cause people to lose control. Because the ancient desolate spiritual flame was a spiritual flame, its power was huge. He had already refined it, so he was naturally fearless. However, Su Xiaochun was different. She couldn't withstand that kind of high temperature, especially since the human body was the most fragile part. A little mistake could burn her to ashes. Qin Feng didn't know how he managed to hold on. In the end, everything calmed down. As long as he didn't make any low-level mistakes, the blazing energy in Su Xiaochun's body wouldn't be able to cause any waves. In the end, after she woke up, she kept crying out in pain, which made him restless. In the end, she stopped crying out in pain and began to enjoy it. Seeing this, he regretted his actions. Why did he have to suppress it? Wouldn't it be better to let nature take its course? With my character, I'm afraid I'm going to go extinct. After burning away the last bit of blazing energy in Su Xiaochun's body, Qin Feng put away the ancient desolate spiritual flame and looked at Su Xiaochun with a strange tone. The latter sat up, stretched her body, and asked, Qin Feng, I feel that your flame is very unusual. Looking at her ignorant face, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. Too lazy to care about this matter, he asked. Feel it carefully. What did the mother of fairies leave for you? Hearing this, Su Xiaochun also became serious. She closed her eyes and slightly felt it. A moment later, a crescent moon mark appeared between her eyebrows. Feeling the mark between her eyebrows, Su Xiaochun opened her eyes instantly, revealing a shocked expression. This is the celestial spirit mark. What is the celestial spirit mark? Qin Feng asked. The celestial spirit mark is the highest magic mark of the fairy clan. It gathers the power of heaven and earth to form a mark. Only the mother of fairies can condense it. Su Xiaochun said, dancing with joy. The great mother of fairies gave me the celestial spirit mark, which means she recognizes me as the next mother of fairies. Looking at the excited Su Xiaochun, Qin Feng's expression became strange. With a thought, the center of his eyebrows flickered and a sun-shaped mark appeared. Yours is the mark of the mother of fairies. What about mine? The mark of the father of fairies. Looking at the mark between Qin Feng's eyebrows, Su Xiaochun was stunned for a moment. A moment later, she suddenly pushed Qin Feng to the ground and pressed on his body. Then, she grabbed at his forehead. This is mine. Qin Feng, you bastard, you actually stole my celestial spirit mark. Qin Feng was confused. This was all done by the mother of fairies. How did it become him who stole it? I didn't steal your celestial spirit mark. This was given to me by the mother of fairies. Qin Feng pushed Su Xiaochun away and quickly retreated. Su Xiaochun treasured his sun-shaped mark so much, which meant that it was definitely not an ordinary mark. How was that possible? The celestial spirit mark is unique to our fairy clan. How can someone without pure fairy bloodline have it? Shu Xiaochun was flustered and exasperated. She was sure that Qin Feng stole it. Idiot, you said it yourself. Only those with pure fairy bloodline can have the celestial spirit mark. If I wanted to steal it, would I be able to? Qin Feng said. Shu Xiaochun was stunned. What he said made sense. Even if the celestial spirit mark was right in front of them, those without pure fairy bloodline would not be able to inherit it. But why do you have the celestial spirit mark? She asked blankly. Qin Feng did not know how to explain this. At this moment, the voice of the mother of fairies came again. Using two marks at the same time can suppress all fairies. Let's go. Qin Feng was just about to ask how he could get the celestial spirit mark when a gust of wind suddenly blew. The two of them were blown away. In his line of sight, Qin Feng saw this green world slowly disappearing. What's going on? He had a bad feeling in his heart. The last time he left, it was not like this. The power of the mother of fairies is disappearing. The voice of the demon eyes sounded. Qin Feng was stunned and asked in a low voice, is she going to die completely? Should be. Can she still be saved? I don't know, but she is a natural spirit of heaven and earth. Moreover, she had evolved to a very high level when she was alive. Maybe she still has a chance in the future. Hearing this, Qin Feng sighed bitterly. If they had not disturbed her twice, the mother of fairies might not be like this. The light was extremely distorted. Soon, they appeared in front of the stone statue. Chapter 368. Dark Elf Assassins, although they did not awaken the Mother of Elves. Both of them had obtained the Holy Spirit Mark. If they activated it at the same time, they could suppress all elves. The two quickly left the ancestral land to reinforce the Light Elves. As soon as they came out, Qin Feng's heart sank. Looking around, there were bloodstains, corpses, Light Elves, and Dark Elves everywhere. Obviously, close to the ancestral land, the Light Elves and Dark Elves had a battle. The Dark Elves had even broken through the defense and killed their way into the depths of the Light Elves' territory. This was not good news for Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun. The two looked at each other and soared into the sky at the same time. Shu Xiaochun flapped her fairy wings behind her back, while Qin Feng had a pair of light wings behind him. In the air, the two of them sensed that there was a particularly strong fluctuation of spiritual power in one direction. They did not dare to stay and quickly flew in that direction. Swoosh! However, on the way, many dark elves attacked. Their black wings flapped in the air, stirring up gusts of wind. These dark elves were not weak, and many of them were in the heaven realm. Qin Feng carried Shu Xiaochun and quickly dodged. Seeing the other party's attack, it was obvious that they came prepared. Obviously, their target was Shu Xiaochun. Qin Feng quickly dodged. His mental power spread out in circles and then swept out. Elves are like beasts. Under the impact of the spiritual power, their bodies trembled, and the weaker ones fell directly. These are some of the dark elf assassins. They are best at sneak attacks and assassinations. Shu Xiaochun's expression was serious as she tried to activate the Holy Spirit Mark. Not now. Qin Feng quickly stopped her and whispered, the Holy Spirit Mark can't be activated casually. Why? Shu Xiaochun did not understand. Qin Feng shook his head. He was not sure if this was the case, but when he was in the world of wood, he felt the loss of spiritual power in his body when he activated it slightly. Therefore, he guessed that the Holy Spirit Mark could not be used without limit. If they really did not have the ability to activate it a second time in a short period of time, then they would have to be careful the first time. In order to resolve the crisis of the Light Elves, the only way was to suppress the Dark Elves on a large scale. Qin Feng did not know if this was the case, but unless his life was in danger, he would not activate it easily. He took Shu Xiaochun and weaved left and right, avoiding the pursuit of the Dark Elves. If they could not avoid it, they would take it head-on. In the sky, figures flickered and spiritual energy surged. Every time they intersected, there would be a fierce explosion of energy. Some Dark Elves fell from the sky. Capture Shu Xiaochun. A leader led several Heaven Realm Dark Elves and charged over. Powerful spiritual energy rippled out causing the space around them to distort. Roar. Divine dragon sky, collapsing roar, and spiritual power spread out at the same time. The dark elves trembled violently and staggered unsteadily. The mystical dragon in Qin Feng's left hand roared while his right hand was filled with spiritual energy. Above his head, his spiritual energy surged as he rushed forward and sent a few dark elves flying. However, before he could rush over, a few more elves blocked his way. The elves that had been sent flying earlier also reacted and blocked their escape route. Qin Feng's face darkened. The distance in the sky was too large, causing the power of his spiritual energy attack and sky-shattering dragon roar to be greatly reduced. Moreover, the elves were all good at flying. Fighting in the air was very disadvantageous for him. His eyes narrowed, and then he quickly descended. As long as we capture Shu Xiaochun, the light elves will be finished. The leader shouted and led the dark elf assassins to dive down. Whoosh! Before they landed, a large flame suddenly rose from the forest and surged toward them. Scatter! These assassin elves were very strong and experienced in battle. They scattered immediately. Chi! However, at this moment, two large hands suddenly reached out from the fire. One was black and one was white, but they released completely different temperatures. The white hand seemed to have flames dancing. Everywhere it passed, flames would rise. The black hand emitted a chilling aura. The stones and trees around them were swept by the hand, and many white crystals appeared. The two large hands grabbed two dark elf assassins and spread the energy they carried. Ah! The two dark elves screamed. One of them was covered in flames, and the white flames danced. The surrounding space could not withstand it and collapsed. In just a few breaths, the dark elf assassin was burned to ashes. As for the dark elf assassin caught by the black hand, his body hardened and turned into an ice sculpture. The black hand lightly shook, and the ice sculpture instantly shattered. Whether it was the temperature of the ancient spiritual desolate flame or the chilling aura of the underworld elixir, they were not something elves of this level could withstand. Even Qin Feng could not fully unleash their power. In the blink of an eye, two experts were killed. This shocked the other dark elf assassins. This is a little tricky. Everyone, be careful, the leader reminded as his sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. However, the surrounding fire burned, and they did not find anything. They quickly moved through the forest. Although there were only 7 or 8 of them, they covered an area of hundreds of meters. Clearly, these were the elite assassins of the Dark Elves. Ah! Suddenly, there was a scream. A dark elf covered in flames rushed out. The white flames burned on his body, and he quickly turned into ashes. Over here, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. In the air, figures flashed and disappeared. They once again locked on a Qin Feng's position and rushed over. Qin Feng looked coldly at the dark elves rushing over. His hands quickly formed a seal and displayed the sky water field. A huge water ball suddenly appeared. Without exception, the dark elves rushed into the water ball. Their bodies seemed to sink into a swamp, and their speed slowed down. Splash! Splash! Mental energy quickly moved through the water, reaping the lives of the dark elves. When fighting against the dark elves, whether in the air or in the forest, the other races did not have the advantage. The dark elves had wings and had a great advantage in aerial combat. In the forest, the dark elves were nature spirits. They were naturally close to nature. Flowers and trees could become their killing weapons. Moreover, they had wings, which gave them extreme speed. The best way to fight against such dark elves was to restrain them. Once the dark elves entered the water, they would be restricted no matter how fast they were. In the end, only the leader and a dark elf assassin escaped the sky water field. How is he so powerful? The leader was shocked. The other party's methods were beyond their expectations. Since ancient times, this group of dark elf assassins had never been in such a difficult situation. They were proficient in concealment and assassination. In a situation where they had the advantage of time, place, and people, they were almost killed by the other party. This would never happen in the past. This person is not simple. Retreat, the leader shouted, and led the remaining dark elf into the forest. Qin Feng did not pursue. In the battle just now, he was also injured. With his current strength, he could still be injured. This group of dark elf assassins was very strong. Chapter 369. Absolute suppression after killing the dark elf assassins. Qin Feng hurriedly brought Su Xiaochun to the most intense area of the battle. Before entering the area, they could already hear the deafening battle cries, the clashing of weapons, the explosion of energy, and the strong smell of blood. Qin Feng slowly approached the battlefield with Su Xiaochun. Before determining the specific situation, he didn't dare to rush out rashly. He covered the two with his mental strength and hid in the air. The two hid on a lush tree branch and pushed aside the leaves in front of them to look through. Even though Qin Feng was prepared, he couldn't help but gasp. Not far away in the open space, there were battles everywhere. Blood dyed the ground incomparably dark red, and broken limbs could be seen everywhere. Painful wails, roars, clanging of weapons, explosions of spiritual energy, and the sound of air cracking all intertwined together, rendering this place like hell on earth. Su Xiaochun's face turned pale. She had never seen such a tragic scene and was scared silly. This is a real battle. Qin Feng sighed and brought her to explore the surroundings. The battlefield was very big, and they were only in a corner. Moreover, this was a battle of the weak dark elves. They had to enter the core of the battlefield, because only by subduing the higher-ups of the dark elves could they control the situation. Over there, Su Xiaochun pointed at a place and said. Qin Feng looked in that direction and carefully sensed. He could indeed feel a strong fluctuation of spiritual energy faintly diffusing. Let's go. Qin Feng brought Su Xiaochun directly across the small battlefield. Wherever they went, there was a rain of blood. Any dark elf in front of them was quickly killed by him. As the two passed through the small battlefield, the fluctuation of spiritual energy became clearer. They could even see through the dense forest and see colorful spiritual energy surging in the distance. There were figures flashing and fighting. Qin Feng and Su Xiaochun carefully approached. As they approached, the pungent smell of blood followed and became stronger. Qin Feng hid in a corner and glanced around the battlefield. This was indeed the core of the battlefield because there were many powerful light and dark elves, a few humans, and some spiritual beasts. Bang! There was a huge explosion somewhere, and a figure retreated in a sorry state. A black light quickly shot towards Qin Feng and landed right at his feet. Aside, Qin Feng's pupils constricted. This was Jing Wui's weapon. He picked up aside, raised his head, and squinted his eyes. Jing Wui slid along the ground for more than 10 meters before coming to a stop. His expression was extremely solemn. Swoosh! Two rays of light shot out from the point of explosion, and an extremely oppressive spiritual energy fluctuation whizzed towards Jing Wui. Jing Wui's body trembled slightly, and his expression was gloomy. Even he felt powerless against Xianyuan Owl and Ouyang Yi at the same time. Xianyuan Owl and Ouyang's figures brushed against the ground as they shot over like sharp arrows. The ferocious spiritual energy vibrations caused Jing Wui's face to turn even paler. Boom! However, at this moment, a ray of chaotic light shot out from the forest. It was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning. It left a faint mark in the air, and in the end, it hit Ouyang Ye's body. Ouyang Ye's body shook violently, and he spat out blood as he was sent flying. The ray of chaotic light drew an arc on the ground before it was reflected back towards Xianyuan Owl. The latter's body tensed up, and a bright golden light spread out from his body, turning into the Emperor's bell. Clang! At the same time, the ray of chaotic light heavily hit the Emperor's bell. After a short stalemate, the Emperor's bell shattered. Xianyuan Owl's eyes widened, and he quickly used his arms to block in front of his chest. An extremely dull sound was heard, and Xianyuan Owl's body was sent flying as he coughed out blood. The ray of chaotic light did not stop, and it continued to charge forward. Rip! However, at this moment, Ouyang Yi reacted. He drew a sharp sword flower with his long sword and shot it towards the ray of chaotic light. Bang! With an explosion, the sword flower shattered, and the ray of chaotic light slowed down, revealing its true appearance. Qin Feng, Xinyuan Owl, and Ouyang Yi were stunned at the same time, and their eyes flickered. Qin Feng tossed the aside to Jing Wui and smiled. Even your weapon has been destroyed. Looks like you're in a sorry state. Do you think they're ordinary people? Jing Wui rolled his eyes and then asked seriously, did you succeed? More or less. Qin Feng nodded. With a wave of his hand, his mental strength was pulled back, and Shu Xiaochun's body was revealed bit by bit. The two of them looked at each other and flew into the sky at the same time. Qin Feng shouted at Shu Changkong, who was fighting with An Pu. Clan leader Shu. Shu Changkong was stunned at first, but he quickly reacted. He looked down and stopped at Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun. Looking at the smiles on their faces, his eyes were filled with joy. Did you succeed? He asked quickly. Qin Feng nodded, flew into the sky, and smiled. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Hearing this, Shu Changkong's heart was completely relieved. He looked at An Pu and said loudly, An Pu, it's not too late to stop now. An Pu's eyes flickered as he glanced at Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun. He lowered his eyes and said, Brother Shu, it's already like this. Don't try to be mysterious in front of me. Shu Changkong's smile disappeared. An Pu, this is your Dark Elf clan's last chance. Oh, is that so? You're very confident. An Pu smiled faintly, looked at Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun, and said, Is it because of these two people? If so, I don't mind destroying your last bit of confidence. With that, he waved his arm, and a ninth heaven realm dark elf broke away from his opponent and appeared beside An Pu. Seeing this, Shu Changkong shook his head helplessly. Then, his expression gradually turned cold. He said to Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun, Do it. Qin Feng and Shu Xiaochun nodded. They activated the heavenly spirit mark, and two marks shot out, fusing together in mid-air. Suddenly, heaven and earth shook. Endless rays of light seeped in from all directions, and an indescribable pressure slowly descended. All the elves raised their heads in shock at this moment, and their faces showed deep reverence. Then they all knelt down. Even Shu Changkong and An Pu's bodies trembled violently. Under the pressure, their legs bent bit by bit, and finally, with a bang, they knelt in mid-air. In the fused pattern, a hazy figure slowly emerged. Mother of the Elves. Countless elves revealed a look of shock, and then knelt down devoutly. How is this possible? An Pu stared at the hazy figure, and waves surged in his heart. The mother of the elves was confirmed to be dead, and the ancestor of their lineage had been confirmed. Moreover, a portion of the dark energy suppressed by the mother of the elves was cut off, forming the current dark elves. However, the mother of the elves had actually reappeared. This made him extremely terrified. Whether it was the light elves or dark elves, they all worshipped the mother of the elves and did not dare to resist. Chapter 370. The origin of the curse. As the sigh rang out, all of the dark elves began to tremble. Even the circulation of the spiritual energy within their bodies became sluggish. Wisps of black air rose from their bodies. It was even worse. Their elven ears, the source of their acute hearing, were buzzing, and they couldn't hear anything. The pair of fairy wings froze and lost control. Many fairies fell from the sky. Then his keen perception of the natural world gradually deteriorated. Mother of the fairies, please spare my life. Dark Pu turned pale with fright. This was a regression. Their elven bloodline was going to fade away, and they would become wild beasts without intelligence. Great Mother of the Fairies, we know our mistakes. Countless dark elves knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. If the elven bloodline that they were so proud of degenerated just like that, they would become the lowest level of birds and beasts without intelligence. How could they accept that? Those who come into contact with the power of darkness should be destroyed. A soft shout reverberated in the air. Immediately after, a series of ripples spread out. Wherever the ripples passed, all the dark elves trembled violently before collapsing. When Anpu saw this scene, his heart was like dead ashes. He never thought that, just as he was about to succeed, the mother of fairies would appear, causing his 1,000 years of hard work to be destroyed in an instant. In the face of such power, they did not resist at all. This was a pressure that came from the depths of their bloodline. They would involuntarily submit, not daring to resist. I really can't accept this. Dark Pooh sighed softly, and his vision gradually dimmed. All the dark elves fell to the ground, and the light gradually faded away. The two imprints shot back to Qin Feng and Su Xiaochun's foreheads. Then their bodies swayed, and they fell from the sky. Shu Changkong waved his hand and caught the two of them. Then he scanned the area. The people from the imperial capital had already left. The other spirit beasts that had besieged them had also retreated quickly. Shu Changkong's eyes were gloomy. Although they had won in the end, they had suffered great losses. "Chief, what should we do with these dark elves?" The Grand Elder rushed over and asked. Shu Changkong pondered for a moment and waved his hand. "Lock them all up." The Grand Elder frowned, and murderous intent flashed in his eyes. "Clan leader, the Dark Elves have been fighting with us for thousands of years. There is no way to reconcile the grievances between us. Why don't we take this opportunity to—" "Grand Elder, the Dark Elves are also part of the elf tribe." Shu Changkong shook his head, interrupted the Grand Elder, and said in a deep voice, "Their dark power has been purified by the Mother of the Elves, and their elven bloodline has also been weakened to varying degrees. They're no longer a threat to us. Moreover, after this battle, our light elven race has also suffered great losses. If we continue to slaughter them, it will be a great blow to our light elven race." Hearing this, the Grand Elder fell silent. He shook his head and didn't say anything. When Qin Feng woke up, it was already a day later. He got up from the bed and felt the weakness in his body. He couldn't help but bitterly smile. It seemed that his guess was right. The Holy Spirit mark really couldn't be used easily. He entered a state of cultivation and circulated the 100 calamity heaven-swallowing art. Soon, his chi sea was filled again. Spiritual energy surged, and he felt full of strength. He looked at the black crystal and pondered for a moment. Then he asked the demon eye, "Old devil, do you know the origin of this crystal, evil demon seed?" "I already know," the demon eye said. "It's not strange that you can condense an evil demon seed. Is it because the evil demon contract took effect?" Qin Feng sighed softly. "No." "What?" Qin Feng was shocked. This evil black crystal wasn't because of the evil demon contract. Then how did it end up in his body? "Old devil, what's going on?" Qin Feng asked. He always thought that the black crystal was related to the evil demon contract, so he didn't ask much. Now, it seemed that it wasn't so simple. The demon eye was silent and didn't say anything. Qin Feng was anxious. "Old devil, what's going on? Why do I have an evil demon seed in my body? Why do I turn into a monster when I use its power?" After a long silence, the demon eye sighed deeply and said, "Do you know what a curse is?" Qin Feng's pupils shrank, and he clenched his fists. "Is it related to my family's curse?" "It seems that you already know." The demon eye nodded and said, "Evil demon seed, also known as the power of a curse. It will mess up a person's mind, and in the end, they will go crazy. All living things in the world, as long as they are cursed, they can't escape. Only in special places, where the power of the curse won't be activated, can they escape this calamity. Is there a way to break this curse?" Qin Feng hurriedly asked. He was shocked. What was the origin of this old devil? He even knew the secret of his family. The curse was sent down by the heavens, and there's no way to break it. Perhaps only by transcending and standing above the heavens can you break it, the demon eye said. Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked and absent-minded. Transcending the heavens, standing above the heavens, this was too illusory and unrealistic for him. Old devil, then do you know what's the matter with my family's curse? Why don't the other slaves have it? Is it related to the extinction of my ancestor? Qin Feng asked. Tan Xian and Jing Wui were both descendants of that tribe, and they were also cursed by the heavens. Why didn't they have an evil demon seed, and why hadn't he heard about the curse? The curse might have already appeared in your ancestors' era, but whether it was the entire tribe or just one or two branches that were cursed, no one knows. The real curse appeared in an even older era, even older than that era. Hearing this, Qin Feng was startled. In the dark evil tower, the small guardian tower there said that their entire tribe was cursed by the heavens. Why was it different from what the demon I said? Was it cursed even earlier than that? As if knowing what Qin Feng was thinking, the demon I said, in your ancestors' era, your tribe was extremely powerful, and even the heavens couldn't send down the curse. The curse appeared much earlier than that era, but whether or not it has anything to do with your ancestors' tribe is still unclear. After a moment of silence, the demon I slowly said, in that distant era, when the primal chaos was first created, the heavens and earth were divided, and geniuses were everywhere. It was a dazzling era, and in that world, there's also a Qin clan. However, that clan wasn't on the same level as the Qin family in the City of Sin. The current 9 great countries couldn't even compare. That Qin clan was extremely powerful, and it could even be said that the heavens and earth couldn't tolerate them. They were the true rulers of this world, and there were even rumors that in the distant past, there was someone in this clan who broke through the shackles of the gods and reached the legendary supreme realm, dominating this world. Is that Qin clan the current Qin family? Qin Feng frowned and asked. The demon I shook his head and said, I'm not sure. Then what does this have to do with the family's curse? Qin Feng asked. Chapter 371. The Vanished Clan. In that distant era, the 9 war gods that appeared in the Qin clan were exceedingly powerful. Each of them was invincible in the heavens and earth, sweeping through the heavens and suppressing everything. They contributed greatly to quelling the invasion of the evil spirits. When talking about the 9 war gods, the ancient voice of the demon, I was filled with a deep yearning and complex emotions. What happened after that? Qin Feng asked. Although the 9 war gods of the Qin clan were all extremely powerful, they didn't truly transcend the god domain after all. It was impossible for them to be a match for the evil spirits that had already taken the final step. Each of the powerful war gods protected this world in their respective era. They all died while quelling the invasion of the evil spirits. Not a single one of them survived. 9 war gods, 9 evil spirit invasions, 9 peak experts of the world fell. After a moment of silence, the desolate voice of the demon I rang out once more. It's precisely because of this that they died in battle for the sake of protecting the lives of the world. One of them died, and not long after, another appeared, connecting this glory. It's impossible for it not to shock the hearts of the people. It's impossible for the people of the world to forget them. It can be said that during that era, their battle accomplishments and brilliance illuminated the entire world. The prestige of the Qin clan reached its peak. There were no other powers that could contend against them. All the living beings in this world worshipped them. Only such people and such a clan deserved the worship of the people of the world. The demon I spoke in a heavy voice. What happened after that? Qin Feng asked. After that, the demon I sighed. His tone was unclear as he slowly continued. After that, when a 9th war god died while stopping the invasion of the evil spirits, the extremely powerful Qin clan actually collapsed in a single night. All the experts in the clan were wiped out in a single night. At that time, this shocked the entire world and shocked everyone. No matter what, they couldn't understand why such a powerful clan would collapse in a single night. Although the strongest war god died, such a powerful clan with countless experts and a terrifyingly deep foundation should be enough to protect this clan. But why was it that in a single night, so many experts died, fled, or disappeared? Such a huge clan quietly withdrew from the stage of history, just like that. Although they couldn't understand, in view of the contributions the Qin clan had made to this world, the other major clans and powers still took care of the Qin clan. But even so, the remaining weak clansmen couldn't continue living in that place. Because they were too weak, they couldn't protect that place. Although the other major clans still took care of the Qin clan, they also clearly understood that they couldn't allow the Qin clan to continue staying there. Therefore, the remaining clansmen left with the pain of being exterminated and dissatisfaction with the reality. Such a great family has sadly fallen in the midst of its glory. Towards the end, Demonic Eye's aged voice became somewhat heavy and hoarse. His tone was extremely complicated and difficult to understand. Qin Feng drew in a deep breath of cold air. He clenched his fist and calmed the churning sea of qi in his heart. Although he didn't know what kind of shock the fall of a clan would cause, he knew that even the 9 great realms wouldn't be able to survive. However, it could be imagined that even the 9 great nations in the depths of the continent could not compare to it. It could be seen how powerful that clan was. However, such a terrifying clan had actually collapsed overnight. It was not difficult to see how terrifying the enemies who had annihilated the clan in such a tragic battle were. Letting out a deep breath, Qin Feng shook his head as a contemplative look appeared on his face. To be able to wipe out such a powerful clan, how terrifying must the strength of the person who did that be? The Qin clan's destruction has always been a mystery. No one knows why. The demon eye sighed. After a moment of silence, he continued, but later on, there was a saying in the world. What saying? Qin Feng hurriedly asked. The Qin clan's destruction was caused by a curse. Curse? Qin Feng asked in surprise. That's right, it's a curse. After a moment of silence, the demon eye continued. A few years after the Qin clan was destroyed, such a saying circulated. At that time, everyone felt that it was impossible for such a huge clan to be wiped out by humans. It was a curse. Because this clan was too heaven-defying, 9 war gods appeared one after another, and all of them were incomparably powerful. No one could compare to them. However, there were actually 9 of such heaven-defying characters, and all of them came from the same clan. They were too powerful and too heaven-defying. Hence, they suffered the injustice of the heavens and were mercilessly cursed, resulting in the destruction of the Qin clan. Because they were too powerful, they were cursed by the heavens. Although this saying was somewhat unbelievable, the things that happened later on all verified this saying. This also caused the people of the world to gradually believe that this was a curse from the heavens, a curse on the Qin clan. What happened? His hands loosened and clenched again. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have faintly sensed something. He asked. After the Qin clan went into seclusion, due to their past glory and the so-called curse, many major powers were secretly paying attention to the Qin clan's development. However, they discovered that the Qin clan seemed to have really been cursed. After pausing for a moment, the demon eye continued. The strength and terror of the Qin clan is inseparable from the cultivation talent of the clansmen. Although the clan has fallen, there are still many juniors with outstanding talent. However, for every Qin clan member who grew stronger, no matter how good their cultivation talent was or how good their cultivation environment was, their strength would ultimately stop below the deity realm. Not a single one of them could enter the deity realm. As the era progressed, the other major powers were also developing. Only the Qin clan continued to regress. First, there were no deities. Later on, there were only half-deities. Voidless. Later on, the curse intensified. For every expert of the Qin clan, when they reached a certain level of strength, misfortune would befall them. In light cases, their cultivation bases would be crippled. In heavy cases, they would directly die. Although for those Qin clan experts who died or were crippled, people would find a reason to explain it. It wasn't as strange as when the entire clan was wiped out. However, it always happened to the Qin clan, and no one from the Qin clan was able to avoid it. This made it hard for people to accept. What is going on exactly? Why would misfortune happen? Qin Feng had a look of contemplation on his face as he asked. As the curse intensified, the Qin clan's development became increasingly difficult. In the end, they had no choice but to completely disappear from the eyes of the world. At that time, the people of the world finally believed that this was a curse from the heavens, stopping the development of this heaven-defying clan. The demon I spoke in a heavy voice. The Qin clan completely disappeared. No one knew where this once extremely powerful clan went to. From then on, the glorious Qin clan disappeared. After drawing in a deep breath, Qin Feng slowly relaxed his tightly clenched fists. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "The current Qin family, is it the Qin clan that disappeared in the past? Whether the Qin family is the Qin clan that disappeared or not, I don't dare to be certain." Shaking his head, the demon I spoke in a heavy voice. "After the Qin clan completely disappeared, it was the era of your ancestor. At that time, the curse also appeared. Maybe the people of the Qin clan were in that tribe as well. This is another type of curse. The curse on your body originated from your ancestor's tribe or the remnant of the Qin clan. You will have to unravel this yourself." "Oh," Qin Feng replied. He suddenly asked, "Old devil, how are you so clear about the matters of my ancestor?" Chapter 372. Detain? Qin Feng smiled. He had already abandoned everything and entered the evil path. Why would he be afraid of this so-called curse? "In that case, you don't know if the curse on my body came from the Qin clan or the era of my ancestor's tribe." Qin Feng shook his head and asked, "Maybe it came from tribe." Demon Eye smiled. "That clan is too heaven-defying. It might not be so easy for them to completely disappear from the stage of history. The tribe of your ancestor might not have no members of the Qin clan." Qin Feng's heart trembled. Hearing Demon Eye's words, he also felt that this was a possibility. The declining Qin clan had slowly developed in the later stages. It was indeed very possible for them to become a major power and become one of the bloodlines of that tribe. After all, there were no records of that clan in the future. So, everything was possible. What does this have to do with the evil seed in my body? No matter if it is that clan or the tribe, they were the main force behind the resistance against the evil spirits. Being cursed by the heavens is very likely to be related to the evil spirits. After a moment of silence, Demon Eye said, "And the evil seed in your body is related to the evil spirits. Once you abandon yourself and enter the evil path, you will become an evil being that cannot be tolerated by this world. So, you must resist the temptation. You must not use the power of the evil seed." Qin Feng frowned when he heard that. He could clearly hear the worry in Mo Yan's words. But didn't Demon Eye appear that day when he entered the evil path? It only returned to his body because of special circumstances. Now that Demon Eye said this, he was a little stunned. If he used the evil seed, wouldn't Demon Eye be able to occupy his body? Why did Demon Eye want to stop him? "Demon Eye, are you from the evil spirit race? That day, when I entered the evil path, you were able to come out?" Qin Feng asked. "This of course not. I am a member of the demon realm. I am different from the evil spirits." Demon Eye coughed. His tone seemed to be anxious to explain. "If you entered the evil path that day, I wouldn't have been able to occupy your body. Naturally, I would have come out to stop you." "Is that so?" Qin Feng was suspicious. "Otherwise what? If I were an evil spirit, I would have devoured you." Demon Eye snappily said. "I don't doubt that." Qin Feng rubbed his chin and muttered, "Especially after you woke up, my disgust for you has lessened. Instead, I feel an indescribable sense of dependence. Although I know that you taught me and made me stronger so that you could take over my body, my hatred for you is not as strong as before. Kiki, it doesn't matter if I hate you or not. As long as I can achieve my goal, that's all that matters." The demonic I let out that unpleasant laugh again. Qin Feng curled his lips. Just as he was about to ask, he sensed someone walking in. He quickly cut off the connection with the Demon Eye. In the dark space, the old man was floating in the air. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and smiled bitterly. "Girl, your child is really not simple. Even I was almost exposed. However, it doesn't matter. He has already grown. If we only rely on threats and spurring him on, it will very likely harm him in the future. He has his own beliefs and goals. This is what he can rely on." Qin Feng opened his eyes. After seeing that it was Tan Xian and Jing Wui, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and got up. "Have you rested well?" Tan Xian sat by the bed and asked with a smile. Qin Feng nodded and asked, "Has the problem of the light elves been solved?" "Probably." Tan Xian nodded and said, "Most of the dark elves have surrendered. Only a small number of them are still imprisoned." Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded slightly. Tan Xian looked at him, paused for a moment, and asked, "You are thinking about Xian Yuan Owl and the others, right? They should have left." "Yes. Without the support of the Dark Elves, they should not be able to survive here. The danger of the 100,000 Barren Mountains is not just for show." Tan Xian nodded, then looked at Qin Feng and said, "We should also leave." As he spoke, he glanced at Jing Wui, who had lowered his head and was deep in thought. Qin Feng understood Tan Xian's meaning and said softly, "After resting for a day, we should also leave. We have been delayed here for a long time." The two looked at Jing Wui and did not speak. The latter raised his head. At first, he was startled, but then he threw his head back and laughed. He resumed his carefree attitude and said, "Why are you all looking at me like that? I know what to do." The Light Elves, who had been divided for thousands of years, were finally united. This was undoubtedly a great occasion for the Light Elves to celebrate. And they had to know that the main factor in the unification of the Light and Dark Elves was Qin Feng. Now that he had obtained the Celestial Spirit Mark, he could be considered half an elf, and his status was very high. In addition, before they awakened the Mother of the Elves, Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the Flower Explosion had also contributed a lot. They had restrained many experts, and the elves' impression of them had changed greatly. Tonight, the entire elf clan was celebrating this hard-won unification. As people who had contributed greatly, Qin Feng and the others were naturally treated with high standards of courtesy. There was an endless stream of people toasting them. Even some of the old elves' intentions made Qin Feng's hair stand on end. They actually wanted to choose him as their son-in-law and marry their granddaughters and daughters to him. Looking at a group of gorgeously dressed female elves being pushed over, Qin Feng felt a headache. Although the elves were all handsome men and beautiful women, who would be interested in a pair of big wings? He, little brother Qin Feng, my granddaughter is the #1 beauty of the elves. Bulsh ***, my daughter is the one who is knowledgeable and knowledgeable. My sister is the #1 beauty of the elves. Go away, you're just a little kid. Why are you looking for your brother-in-law?" The group of elves pushed, and Qin Feng found a chance to escape quickly. When the elves stopped chasing him, Qin Feng heaved a long sigh of relief. Damn, the Celestial Spirit Mark is so awesome. He knew that the elves had changed their impression of him greatly, mainly because he had obtained the Celestial Spirit Mark. The Celestial Spirit Mark is the root of the Mother of the Fairies. You being able to obtain it is the greatest recognition that the Mother of the Fairies has for you. You can use it to mobilize the fairies. Moreover, with the Celestial Spirit Mark, your future is limitless. Shu Changkong walked over, looked at Qin Feng, and said with a smile, "If Xiaochun wasn't still young, I would have thought about it too." Clan leader Shu, please don't joke about this. Qin Feng shook his head. "I'm not joking." Shu Changkong shook his head and said seriously, "The path to becoming the Mother of the Elves is not so easy. Although Xiaochun has the qualifications to become the Mother of the Elves, she may not succeed. However, you have the Celestial Spirit Mark now. If you help Xiaochun, the chances of success are very high." Qin Feng's eyes slowly narrowed. Shu Changkong was implying something. Clan leader, Shu wants to keep me in the elves? Chapter 373. The four overlord tribes looking at Shu Changkong. Qin Feng frowned slightly. This person was very scheming. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Moreover, the fact that he could sit in the position of the elf tribe's chief was enough to show that his methods were not ordinary. Qin Feng believed that Shu Changkong had 100 reasons to forcibly detain him for the sake of the elf tribe. If that was the case, what should he do? It was definitely impossible for him to forcibly leave. Feigning civility would probably not work on someone as scheming as Shu Changkong. Just as he was thinking, Shu Changkong smiled faintly and said, "Qin Feng, don't worry. You have made a great contribution to the unification of the elf tribe. I, Shu Changkong, am not the kind of person to burn bridges after crossing the river. Moreover, you have a celestial spirit mark of the Mother of the Elves. Even I can't force you. This is a great disrespect to the Mother of the Elves." Hearing that, Qin Feng relaxed. However, he still did not understand what Shu Changkong meant by that sentence. It couldn't be just nonsense. "I'm afraid that clan leader Shu's words have other meanings," Qin Feng said. Everything was under his control in his territory. Qin Feng did not want to be unclear, whether it was good or bad. He wanted to make things clear so that he would have a better idea. He's smart. Shu Changkong smiled and suddenly asked, "You want to leave the 100,000 barren mountains and go to the outside world, right?" Qin Feng nodded. Shu Changkong was silent for a while. Suddenly, he said, "Take Xiaochun away." "What?" Qin Feng looked at Shu Changkong in shock. He thought that he had heard wrongly. Shu Changkong actually wanted him to take his daughter away. Was this a disguised elopement? After being stunned for a while, Qin Feng shook his head and said, "I really don't understand what Patriarch Shu means." However, Shu Changkong sighed heavily and said, "I have no choice. Xiaochun has already been confirmed as the next successor of the Mother of the Elves, but it doesn't mean that she can rest easy." "Why do you say that?" Qin Feng did not understand. The elves of light and dark had been unified. Who could threaten the elves? Nothing can threaten the elves here, but this place also limits the development of the elves. Shu Changkong sighed softly and said, "In the past, the elf tribe was extremely important even in the vast world outside. But now we can only hide in the 100,000 barren mountains. If we want the elf tribe to have a better development, we have to go to the outside world. Xiaochun is the next mother of the fairies. Revitalizing the fairy race will be her life's arduous mission." When Qin Feng heard that, he shook his head and said, "Given the current strength of the elf tribe, we should be able to get out of the 100,000 barren mountains." Shu Changkong shook his head and smiled bitterly. "It's not that easy to get out of the 100,000 barren mountains. Even the combined forces of a few overlord tribes could not get out, let alone the current elf tribe. So difficult." Qin Feng was stunned. If the entire elf tribe could not get out of the 100,000 barren mountains, how could the few of them succeed? "Patriarch Shu." Shu Changkong waved his hand and interrupted Qin Feng. He said, "Others might not be able to get out, but not you, because I can't see through your fate. You seem to be shrouded in a dense fog, vast, empty, and ethereal. Also, your three friends are not simple people. With your team, you might be able to get out of the 100,000 barren mountains. That's why I asked Xiaochun to go out with you. I have a feeling that you will be Xiaochun's and our elf tribe's benefactor." Qin Feng smiled. "Patriarch Shu, what you said is a little mysterious. Don't deny things that you don't understand now. One day, when you reach this height, you will know that many things that you don't understand may not necessarily not exist. You might think that all of this is very mysterious, but have you ever thought about why the elf tribe was divided for thousands of years, only to be unified when you came? Because of you, Xiaochun was recognized by the Mother of the Elves and obtained the celestial spirit mark." Qin Feng was stunned. He looked at him and thought about it carefully. He was really the elf tribe's benefactor. "Patriarch Shu, aren't you afraid that something will happen if you ask Xiaochun to follow me?" Qin Feng asked. "Life and death are fated. Also, I don't think that you will stay in the 100,000 barren mountains." Shu Changkong shook his head and said, "Everyone has their own path. On this path, you will experience many things. As you grow, your state of mind will also change. Your path is not here. The wind will not stop here." After listening to Shu Changkong's words, Qin Feng fell into deep silence. The mysterious old man in the burial area also said something similar to him. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, "Since Patriarch Shu can see through it, I won't be so rigid. I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee that as long as I'm alive, Xiaochun will be fine." Looking at Qin Feng, Shu Changkong smiled and patted Qin Feng's shoulder. With your words, I'm relieved. This is the polyphonic flute. It contains the special sound wave attack of our elf tribe. If you encounter a group of spirit beasts, blow this flute. They should be afraid. With that, Shu Changkong handed a green flute that was as long as one's arm to Qin Feng and warned, remember, don't blow this flute in front of the dwarf overlord tribe. They are our enemies. The dwarf overlord tribe? Qin Feng was stunned. There are 8 overlord tribes in the 100,000 Bear Mountains. 3 of them are in decline, like our elf tribe. There are 4 overlord tribes in the world: the giant tribe, the Naga tribe, the dwarf tribe, and the heavenly fox tribe. These 4 overlord tribes are currently the strongest tribes in the 100,000 Bear Mountains. But if you are careful, you won't encounter these overlord tribes. Are these 4 overlord tribes very strong? Qin Feng asked. Very strong. Shu Changkong nodded and said, let me put it this way. Even if the light elf tribe and the dark elf tribe work together, they're no match for any of the overlord tribes. They have existed for tens of thousands of years and have a strong foundation. Our elf tribe has been divided for thousands of years. Even if we are united now, our overall strength is still weaker than theirs. After all, we have been fighting among ourselves for thousands of years and have consumed a lot of energy. Qin Feng was silent for a while. He did not expect that the elf tribe, which was so large, was not the strongest tribe in the 100,000 Bear Mountains. There were 4 overlord tribes above them. The giant tribe and the heavenly fox tribe used to be on good terms with the elf tribe. Alas, forget it, it was a few thousand years ago. They might not remember it, so don't have too much hope. Shu Changkong said, among the 4 overlord tribes, the giant tribe has the least spiritual intelligence. You can leave from there. The elf tribe helped them through a difficult time in the past. I think they will remember this favor. The next morning, when the sky was slightly bright, Qin Feng, Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the excited Popcorn, and Shu Xiaochun left the elf tribe. They did not know that some people in the capital, who should have retreated in the face of difficulties, were bold enough to venture into the 100,000 Bear Mountains alone. Chapter 374. The Giant Tribe at Dawn. Qin Feng and the others left the elf tribe's territory quietly. They went deep into the 100,000 Bear Mountains for 3 full days before they approached the 4 overlord tribes that Shu Changkong mentioned. Of course, they encountered many spirit beasts along the way, but with Shu Xiaochun and the elven tribe's unique polyphonic flute, no spirit beasts dared to cause trouble for them. Even if they encountered some powerful 6th-level spirit beasts, they would not stop Qin Feng and the others. Obviously, even though the elf tribe had fallen from the position of overlord tribe, many spirit beasts still respected them and did not make things difficult for Qin Feng and the others. But in the territory of the 4 overlord tribes, the fear brought by the elf tribe was much smaller and almost negligible. Even because of the overlord tribe's rivalry, some tribes were still hostile to the elf tribe, such as the dwarf tribe that Shu Changkong warned them about. This overlord tribe was extremely hostile to the elf tribe. When the elf tribe was divided and weak, this tribe had massacred the elf tribe. If it were not for the giant tribe, who was on good terms with the elf tribe might have been wiped out thousands of years ago. Qin Feng and the others had to be wary of the dwarf tribe, so they took the route close to the giant tribe. Among the 4 overlord tribes, the dwarf tribe and the giant tribe had the worst relationship. They were at odds with each other and often fought with each other. Walking on the giant tribe's side, they would not encounter the dwarf tribe. Fortunately, the elf tribe had lived here before and had a good understanding of the terrain. They had drawn a very clear map. Although there were some differences, they could still identify the general situation. They walked along the foot of the mountain, resting during the day and traveling at night. Soon, they had passed through more than half of the giant tribe. How big are the giant tribe? Big Popcorn was very excited and wanted to see what the giant tribe looked like. If it were not for Qin Feng, he would have run out. They're bigger than us. Big Popcorn, you can't mess around in the overlord tribe's territory. Qin Feng warned him. This was a tribe that was much stronger than the elf tribe. Even if he was curious about what the giant tribe looked like, he could only suppress his curiosity. In order to hide better, they moved very slowly, sometimes traveling only a few dozen miles a day. Rumble. Suddenly, the earth shook violently. Qin Feng and the others' faces changed. They quickly hid in the bushes. A few minutes later, the earth shook even more violently. A huge figure walked out of the forest not far away. Qin Feng and the others were so shocked that their jaws dropped. It was a giant that was about 30 to 40 meters tall. Other than the thick hair on its body, it was almost exactly the same as a human, except that it seemed to have been magnified dozens of times. He walked over from afar, holding a huge beast bone club in his hand. It looked like the spine of some large animal, and looked quite intimidating. This is a giant. Although they were hiding, they were still very interested in the giant in the depths of the 100,000 Barren Mountains. After seeing the giant's true form, they were all shocked, speechless. From the outside, the giants looked no different from ordinary humans. It was hard to imagine how they could be so big. In the past, they had never heard of the existence of the giant tribe in the 100,000 Barren Mountains. At most, they heard that the depths of the 100,000 Barren Mountains were very mysterious, and there were some mysterious tribes living there. The giant tribe is the same as us elves. Their bloodline is mutated. They were separated from the two races of monster. Human tribe. Su Xiaochun explained to Qin Feng and the others as if she knew a lot. Are you sure that the elves and this big guy in front of us used to be humans? Tan Xian asked. Su Xiaochun paused and said weakly, I also heard it from the elders of the elf tribe. They have lived for a long time, so naturally they know. Tan Xian shook his head and said, the giant tribe shouldn't be related to humans. This place used to be a mass grave, abandoned by the outside world. Other than humans, other races should have existed. Qin Feng was stunned. Hearing Tan Xian's confident tone, he couldn't help but ask, how do you know? Tan Xian smiled and said, in the era of our ancestors, this place was called the Abandoned Land. It was a place where all kinds of monsters lived. Later, our tribe was defeated, and the remaining descendants were sent to this place. If the giant tribe was separated from the human race, it should have happened after our ancestors' descendants were sent here. However, this kind of thing has never been heard of in the primitive land. Hearing this, Qin Feng understood. Tan Xian's inheritance was different from his, so he should know about other things. How much do you know? Jing Wui also asked. That's all. I only remember a few fragments. Tan Xian shook his head, thought for a moment, and said, the reason why no one and no other races can leave the 100,000 Barren Mountains seems to be because there is a mysterious barrier between this place and the outside world. It separates this side of the 100,000 Barren Mountains from the world on the other side of the Esperanto world. Yes, what he said makes sense. I heard from the elders in my tribe that a long time ago, the 8 tyrant tribes once joined forces to attack a place. They wanted to leave the 100,000 Barren Mountains, but in the end, they failed miserably, Su Xiaochun said. A mysterious barrier that separates the two worlds? Qin Feng frowned. Shu Changkong also said something similar. No matter how strong the tyrant tribes were, they couldn't leave the 100,000 Barren Mountains. What exactly is that thing? Can we leave? Jing Wui frowned. If the 8 tyrant tribes couldn't fight their way out, how could they leave? We'll only know if we can leave after we try. Anyway, we've already come this far. There's no way back. While they were talking in secret, the giant that was dozens of meters tall left. It didn't discover Qin Feng and the rest's hiding place. When the giant disappeared from their sight, they walked out and ran into the depths. As they got closer, they encountered the giant tribe from time to time. He was surprised by this tribe. Even the children who looked only a few years old were more than 10 meters tall. Their bodies were frighteningly huge. Fortunately, this tribe wasn't very smart. As long as they hid, even if they didn't deliberately suppress their auras, the other party wouldn't be able to sense them. There are more and more giants. Qin Feng, why do I feel like we've entered the inner part of the giant tribe? Jingwei said as he looked at the 7 or 8 giants walking past. Qin Feng frowned slowly. According to the map, they should be moving along the border of the giant tribe's territory. However, they were encountering more and more giants. What was going on? This should be the border area. He looked around and said, "It should be easy to see where the giant tribe lives. However, there aren't any huge houses or food here." The giant tribe was huge. Naturally, their residence was different from the other tribes. It was bound to be bigger. Their daily necessities couldn't be considered as normal. It was easy to recognize such a huge place. However, the surrounding environment didn't show such signs. Obviously, the giants didn't live here. However, why were there more and more giants? I know. It's a war. The giant tribe is going to war with another tyrant tribe. All of them have come out. While they were deep in thought, Su Xiaochun suddenly exclaimed. Qin Feng and the rest's expressions changed. He quickly covered Su Xiaochun's mouth. The giants weren't far from them. If they were heard, they would be in trouble. Chapter 375. The Battle of the Three Overlord Tribes. At this moment, everyone felt their scalps go numb. It would be troublesome if they were targeted by these big guys. Not far away, a few giants turned their heads and glanced at Qin Feng with their big lantern-like eyes. "What's going on?" asked a giant who was more than 50 meters tall, who was walking at the front. One of the giants scratched his head and looked confused. "I think I heard something, but I didn't see anything." Did the dwarves infiltrate? The leading giant walked over and bent down to look at the forest below. His eyes were a little scarlet, like glowing lanterns. It was a little scary. After a while, he shook his head and said, "There's nothing unusual. The dwarves shouldn't have the guts to come here. Let's go." The dwarves are getting more and more arrogant. We have to teach them a lesson. As the giants left, Qin Feng and the others breathed a sigh of relief. He stared at Su Xiaochun, who smiled awkwardly. "Don't be so surprised," said Qin Feng as he slowly withdrew his spiritual power. If he hadn't used his spiritual power to hide his body at the critical moment, the giants would have definitely discovered them. "Sure enough, the giants and dwarves are at war," said Tan Xian as his eyes gradually deepened. "Tan Xian, look at your expression. Are you planning something bad?" Jingwei knew at a glance that Tan Xian must be planning something. "I think we should do something." Tan Xian shrugged and didn't hide anything. He wanted to build a good relationship with one of the overlord tribes. For example, now that the giants and dwarves were at war, they might be able to imitate the elves and provide some help. If they succeeded, their future would be easy. Qin Feng thought for a while and shook his head. "This is a good idea, but the problem is that the elves can't compare to the giants or dwarves. This is a war between two overlord tribes. I'm afraid we can't help much with just a few of us." "I'm just saying." Tan Xian smiled and said, "The giants are fighting against the dwarves at the front line. This is a good opportunity for us. Their rear is bound to be empty. We can use this opportunity to cross this place." Everyone nodded. The main force of the Titan tribe had entered the front lines. For them, this was a great opportunity. They didn't dare to stop and quickly rushed into the depths. On a mountain peak, Qin Feng and the others were gathered together. They took out a map and compared it with the current environment. Qin Feng said, "We should be close to the rear of the giant tribe's territory. Once we pass through that mountain peak, we should be able to leave their territory." The group rested for a while before heading towards the mountain. As long as they passed through this mountain, they would be able to leave the giant race's territory and enter the depths of the 100,000 barren mountains. "No, there's a battle ahead," Su Xiaochun suddenly said. Everyone looked at her in surprise. "Xiaochun, how did you know there was a battle up ahead?" Jingwei asked. With a huge mountain blocking their way, no matter how good their vision was or how sharp their perception was, they wouldn't be able to detect anything. "Yes." Su Xiaochu nodded. Her small face was slightly dignified as she said, "From the fluctuations of the battle, it should be the giant tribe and the dwarf tribe. No, there's also the Naga tribe." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even the other overlord tribe, the Naga tribe, had joined in. What was going on? Didn't the four overlord tribes rarely have large-scale conflicts? Why were the three overlord tribes fighting all of a sudden? What's the situation of the battle? Qin Feng asked. Su Xiaochun was an elf and had the qualifications to be the mother of all elves. Elves were naturally close to nature. In a natural world, especially in the mountains, the elves' perception was better than ordinary people. It was normal for her to be able to perceive things that they couldn't. It's very big, Su Xiaochun said with a dignified expression. It's impossible to pass through from here. Moreover, their battle didn't happen in a day or two. It lasted for a long time. Everyone's faces darkened. According to Su Xiaochun, this path was considered a dead end. However, where else could they go if they didn't take this path? This was the only path on the map. Forget it. We're close to the depths anyway. Let's explore on our own. Just be careful, Qin Feng said as he put away the map and looked at the forest in the distance. The others nodded. They took a detour to another mountain and found that there was also a battle behind this mountain. The battle cries shook the sky. There were huge giants cutting off the river, and there were also short figures digging out a piece of land. There were also huge snake-like creatures wandering in the forest. Seeing this, they could only continue to take a detour. However, after taking a few detours, there were battles everywhere. It was obvious that the battle lines spread out by the three overlord tribes were huge. If we continue forward, we'll reach the Heavenly Fox tribe, Tan Xian reminded them with a solemn expression. The Heavenly Fox tribe was best at creating illusions. If they entered their territory, they wouldn't know when they would fall into their environment. This was the most dangerous and mysterious tribe among the four overlord tribes. Shu Changkong had sternly warned them not to enter the territory of the Heavenly Fox tribe no matter what. This put them in a difficult situation. If they didn't go through the territory of the Heavenly Fox tribe, they could only force their way through the battle lines of the three overlord tribes. However, was this possible? One overlord tribe was dangerous enough, let alone three overlord tribes. Suddenly, the battle cries came from afar and kept spreading towards them. Oh no! Everyone's expressions changed drastically. The battle circle of the three overlord tribes was expanding towards them. They could vaguely see the huge figures of the giants. There's a cave over there. Qin Feng pointed to a cave under the cliff not far away. Most of it was covered by vines and said, "Let's hide in there for a while." Everyone quickly ran over. Qin Feng used his spiritual power to check and found that there was no danger. He hurriedly went in. This is not a suitable place to hide. Jing Wui's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. Then he pointed to a huge pile of rocks outside and said to everyone, "Move some rocks and block the entrance." Everyone nodded when they heard this. Without hesitation, everyone picked up huge rocks and placed them at the entrance of the cave. In just a few minutes, the huge hole was blocked, leaving only a small hole for a person to squeeze through. Qin Feng used his spiritual power to cover the vines outside and remove any traces of human activity. From the outside, this looked like a very ordinary crack. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't realize that this was a cave. Phew! Hopefully we can avoid them. After entering the cave, Jing Wui blocked the last huge rock, wiped the sweat off his head, and smiled. Once they were involved in the battle circle of the three overlord tribes, they wouldn't be able to survive even if they had 10 lives. There shouldn't be a problem. Qin Feng used his spiritual power to sense the outside for a while. Then he said, they shouldn't have so much energy to observe the surroundings in the incandescent battle. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard Qin Feng's words. However, before they could completely relax, they suddenly thought of an extremely serious problem. Their expressions changed slightly. Chapter 376. Blocked. Hearing his words, Qin Feng quickly used his mental strength to check. He had only done a rough check and did not have time to pay attention to the deeper parts of the cave. As his mental strength continued to spread, the scene inside the cave was also reflected in Qin Feng's mind, causing him to frown. There are no signs of living creatures, But this cave is bottomless. I can't see the bottom. Everyone looked at Su Xiaochun, who spread out her hands. I can only occasionally sense unfamiliar auras in the forest. This is the territory of the giant tribe. We can't be careless. Let's check out the cave first, Tan Xian suggested. Let's see what's going on outside. It's best that we don't stay here for long. Rumble. At this moment, a dull rumbling sound came from outside, as well as a low roar, causing everyone's expression to change. The battle had extended to this side. Everyone's expression changed slightly. They slowly mobilized the spiritual energy in their bodies and stared at the entrance of the cave that was blocked by rocks. Rumble. The muffled rumbles became increasingly deafening, after which the earth began to tremble at this moment. A ferocious aura spread in all directions from the mountain range in an extremely overbearing manner. Finally, it completely covered the entire mountain cave. What a terrifying battle. Qin Feng and the others were shocked. Under the rumble, even the spiritual energy in their bodies became sluggish. Obviously, there were more than 1 or 2 Nine Heavens experts fighting. Without looking, they could tell how fierce the battle outside was just by listening to the sounds. There was no doubt that if they were involved, not even their bones would be left. What's going on? The 3 overlord tribes are fighting on such a large scale. This is a sign that the tribes are going to be wiped out. Qin Feng frowned. Shu Changkong said that the 4 overlord tribes were very restrained and rarely fought on such a large scale. Otherwise, the 4 overlord tribes would have been wiped out long ago. But looking at the situation now, the 3 overlord tribes were fighting on such a large scale. It was obvious that they were going to wipe out the tribes. It's indeed very strange. Logically speaking, if the 4 overlord tribes were to fight like this, the 3 overlord tribes would have been eliminated long ago. Could it be that they only started such a large-scale battle recently? Tan Xian's eyes flickered. After a while, he suddenly froze. Could it be that something happened in the depths of the 100,000 Bear Mountains? Jing Wui was shocked when he heard that. Tan Xian, don't make wild guesses. We can't be so unlucky as to run into everything, right? Tan Xian frowned. When he received the inheritance, he knew some things about the primitive land and the 100,000 Bear Mountains. This place used to be an abandoned land. The reason why it was abandoned seemed to be because of fear. People were afraid of something here, so they isolated this place from the outside world. When their ancestors' tribe still existed, this place had already been abandoned. No one had entered, and no creature had ever come out. Later, when their tribe was defeated, their enemies diluted their pure bloodline and threw them into the primitive land behind the 100,000 Bear Mountains through a huge teleportation formation. As for what was in the 100,000 Bear Mountains, it was still an unsolved mystery. I hope nothing bad happens. He sighed softly in his heart. He felt that it was too much of a coincidence that the 3 overlord tribes started fighting after they entered this place. The few of them stayed quietly in the cave. As time passed, the terrifying battle aura became more and more intense, making everyone secretly speechless. They could sense that the creatures of the 3 overlord tribes on this battlefield were not very strong, but their numbers were quite shocking. The entire mountain forest was covered in battle. After about half an hour, the battle gradually quieted down. The few of them finally heaved a sigh of relief. The battle had finally ended. Qin Feng used his mind power to investigate outside. His face instantly turned ugly, and he could not help but curse, "Damn you! What's going on?" Tan Xian and the others hurriedly asked. Qin Feng looked at everyone and said helplessly, "The battle has stopped temporarily, but the 3 parties are still confronting each other. They haven't completely retreated." When everyone heard this, they were stunned. What was going on? If they wanted to fight, they should hurry up. Why did they have to take a break? Although the 3 overlord tribes had stopped fighting and retreated, they did not leave this place. They were still confronting each other from a distance. As long as Qin Feng and the others went out, they would immediately be exposed to the 3 overlord tribes. "We shouldn't have entered this cave just now. We should have retreated," Jing Wui said. "It's too late to say that now." Qin Feng's pitch-black eyes stared at the dark sky, covered by the lush leaves outside the cave. He shook his head and said, "I'm afraid their confrontation won't end anytime soon. We can't hide here forever. We have to think of another way." Tan Xian nodded and looked deep into the cave. Then he exchanged glances with Qin Feng and Jing Wui and nodded slightly. Whoosh! Qin Feng flipped his palm, and the ancient spiritual desolate flames appeared in a flash. They turned into white flames and surged around his body, illuminating the area. The few of them walked into the depths of the cave. After investigating, they realized that the cave was deeper than they thought. After walking for half an hour, there was no sign of the end. What's going on? This cave doesn't lead underground. Why haven't we walked out after so long? Jing Wui asked suspiciously. They walked for about half an hour at a fast speed. They had already passed through the mountain peak, but it was still dark in front of them. It was like a bottomless pit. No, this soil is fresh. Tan Xian squatted down, grabbed a handful of soil, and smelled it. Fresh? The few of them were stunned. Could it be that this cave was dug out not long ago? In an instant, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. This was too horrifying. Did they dig from the other side, or did they dig from the outside? Are you sure? Qin Feng asked. The air here is humid. It's normal for the soil to smell fresh. It's possible. Tan Xian nodded, then shook his head and said, but the soil here has traces of being turned over. Although it's not obvious, you can still see it if you look carefully. If we continue walking deeper, I should be able to confirm it. After another 10 minutes or so, Tan Xian checked the surroundings again and again. The soil was turned over several times. Finally, he said with a slightly gloomy face, this cave was indeed dug out by someone, and it shouldn't have been more than a day. This cave should be dug from the entrance because the deeper we go, the fresher the soil. This position is... Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and looked at the dark cave. At a certain moment, his pupils dilated. It leads to the hinterland of the giant tribe. It seems that another tyrant tribe dug out this cave and entered the giant tribe's territory. Chapter 377. To rob on the way, this discovery made them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Their bodies were cold. This was actually a passage that another tyrant tribe had opened up to the giant tribe's hinterland. Furthermore, it was not too long ago when a war was likely to break out. What was even more tragic was that they were now in the hole they had dug and had practically followed them in. They didn't know which tyrant tribe was in front of them, but on the other side, there were 3 tyrant tribes confronting each other. If the creatures from the tyrant tribe who had opened up the passageway returned, they would have nowhere to hide and would be surrounded. In fact, if they had observed carefully, they would have found some clues. However, because the battle circle was getting closer and the entrance of the cave should have been covered by someone, they subconsciously thought that it was an ordinary cave and did not check it out immediately. The 3 of them were meticulous people, but they had all been tricked here. F***, what a serious mistake. Jing Wui slapped his thigh. He was an assassin, and observing the terrain was a basic skill, but he had failed miserably here. Now is not the time to talk about this. We should think of a way to resolve this crisis, Qin Feng said. Just dig a small space here, Su Xiaochun said. Qin Feng and the others all shook their heads. This was indeed a good idea. However, in this way, they would still be trapped here. In fact, this place might even evolve into an even larger battlefield, and it was even possible that this mountain would collapse. After all, the other party had secretly opened up a passage to the heart of the giant tribe. Their scheme was bound to be greater. If the giants were to discover this, they might blow up this mountain in a fit of rage. If that happened, they would be buried alive. I can only go deeper. Qin Feng gazed into the pitch-black depths of the cave and said, there must be a conspiracy behind this passage. We can only leave from another exit before they return. That's the only way. The group sped up, and, as they hurried, a dot of light appeared in the distance. The dot of light grew larger and larger. Everyone was overjoyed. It seemed that they were going to pass through this passage. At this moment, they slowed down. Qin Feng's mental energy quickly spread out to sense the situation at the entrance. Under the scan of his mental power, a few figures also appeared in Qin Feng's mind. These were a few dwarves that were not more than 1 meter tall. Although they were not tall, they were very strong, and from their faces, they were also very old. The dwarf clan is guarding the entrance of the cave. Qin Feng analyzed the situation to them. 5 heavenly realm. If it's a sneak attack, we can deal with them. Jing Wui, D aside. And they secretly. Or A. Tan Xian hesitated for a moment before asking. You want to find out what they're up to? Qin Feng nodded and said, only if we know what they want to do can we come up with the most appropriate response. That's a good idea, but we have to set up an ambush outside. What if the dwarves have a lot of elites and we can't attack? Won't we be trapped in a cave? Tan Xian said, but there's only one entrance. The space is small. Even if you can cover your body with your mental energy, I'm afraid it will be difficult to pass through quietly. Qin Feng frowned and pondered. Tan Xian was right. Even if they wanted to know what the dwarves wanted to do, they had to get out of this cave first. Only by ensuring their own safety could they come up with a follow-up plan. They could kill their way out, but if the dwarves returned, they would definitely notice. If a war broke out in the hinterland of the giants, they would be in danger. Just when Qin Feng did not know what to do, Demon Eye's voice suddenly came out. Use your mental energy to disturb them. He was stunned and asked in his heart, is this method feasible? The beasts are afraid of mental energy because they are weak in this aspect, but the dwarves and giants are even weaker. One of them is born with great power, and the other can blend with the earth, but their mental energy is very weak. As long as you control it accurately and guide it, you can create some illusions for them in a short time. Demon Eye said, create illusions? Qin Feng blinked and did not understand what it meant. It's to interfere with their mental energy and create some pictures in their mental energy that will make them have illusions. After a pause, Demon Eye continued, but this requires a high degree of precise control of mental energy. If you are not careful, it will destroy their mental energy. When Qin Feng heard this, he nodded slightly. His spiritual force spread out, and he imagined some scenes. Then he silently used it on the dwarfs. Gradually, their eyes became dull. Let's go. Qin Feng waved his hand and wrapped the 5 dwarves in his mental energy. He carefully walked out of the passage. The 5 dwarves' eyes were silent, and there was no movement. Out of the hole, they quickly hid, and then Qin Feng removed the mental energy from the dwarves. Holy shit! How did you do it? Jing Wui was shocked. Mental energy has a great suppression on the beasts, and the dwarves also have the blood of the beasts. Qin Feng smiled and left carefully. Outside the hole was a huge residential group. The houses were so huge that they were frightening. Some were hundreds of meters high, and some were directly opened up in the mountains with huge caves with a diameter of 100 meters. This should be the place where the giants live. In front of them, there was a stone field with jagged rocks, hundreds of kilograms, thousands of kilograms, tens of thousands of kilograms of boulders, large and small, everywhere. It just left a place to hide in this open area. Qin Feng and the others quickly entered the pile of rocks, and their mental energy spread out and scanned the surrounding situation. There's something. Suddenly, Qin Feng's mental energy found that there was a group of people not far away. They were all dwarves, and there were 4 dwarves working together to carry a wooden box. The box was very shabby, the corners were worn, and even some places were rotten, but looking at the dwarves, it seemed that this thing was very precious, and they were very careful when lifting it. Qin Feng told Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the others what he found with his mental energy. Carrying a box. What did they want to do? Jing Wui was stunned. They secretly opened up this passage just to steal this rotten wooden box. It seems that this thing is not simple. Something that the dwarves would try so hard to steal was certainly not an ordinary thing. What should we do? Snatch it? Tan Xian asked. We must snatch it. This must be a treasure of the giants. We can't let it fall into the hands of the dwarves, Su Xiaochun said. Shu Xiaochun said. Their elf clan and the giant clan were good friends, but the dwarf clan and the elf clan were enemies. Since she encountered them, she naturally wanted to help the giant clan to protect this thing. Qin Feng and the others looked at each other and nodded at the same time. There are a total of 6 dwarves, and their strength is in the small heaven realm, but there must be dwarves nearby. We must finish this quickly. Jing Wui and Tan Xian nodded slightly, and the spiritual energy in their bodies quickly circulated. Qin Feng's mental energy wrapped around them, and they carefully approached. When they were less than 10 meters away, they suddenly launched an attack, like hibernating poisonous snakes. At the same time, Qin Feng's mental energy quickly spread out and swept towards the dwarves. Chapter 378. Absconding with the treasure, they shuttled through the rubble for a while to make sure there were no other dwarves nearby before stopping. They surrounded the rotten wooden chest and looked it up and down, their eyes filled with curiosity. The rotten wooden chest was very rotten, as if it could be smashed with a slap. They couldn't tell what kind of wood it was made of. From the outside, it looked very ordinary, and there was nothing special about it. But the dwarf had spent a lot of effort to get it, so it was definitely not ordinary. "Thank you. This is the treasure of the giants. Let's return it." Saying this, Shu Xiaochun was about to put away the rotten wooden chest, but 2 hands pressed on the chest. "What are you doing?" Shu Xiaochun looked at them in confusion. Tan Xian smiled and said, "We agreed to take it, but we didn't say we would return it to the giants." "What do you mean?" Shu Xiaochun's eyes widened and said, "This is the treasure of the giants. How can you take it without their permission? We took it from the dwarves. Why should we return it to the giants?" Qin Feng shook his head and said, "Whether we return it or not, let's see what's inside first." This is robbing." Shu Xiaochun pointed at the 2, her face red with anger. "Big brother, how can they do this? How can they steal other people's treasure, and the elves and giants used to be good friends? I already know their character. They have done many robberies. I am ashamed to be associated with them." Jing Wui gave Su Xiaochun "I'm a good person" smile. "You see, Big brother alone can't beat them. Now that we're in an unusual situation, we can only temporarily submit to their tyranny. For the sake of the big picture, we must learn to endure." Qin Feng and Tan Xian's mouths twitched. It really wasn't easy for someone to be as wretched as Jing Wui. Damn, at the very least, you should have concealed your burning gaze as you stared at the wooden chest. Yes, Jing Wui's character is upright. He will never do such things. How can we let you get involved in this kind of thing? Jing Wui, take them away for a while so that you won't be in a difficult situation, Tan Xian said calmly. Hearing this, Jing Wui glared and said, "How can I leave? I have to be here to supervise you. I will not allow you to take other people's things." Then he said to Su Xiaochun with righteous indignation, "Xiaochun, you stay away for now. If they dare to have any evil thoughts today, I will definitely fight them to the death. I refuse to believe that the moral of the world has deteriorated to such an extent that a bunch of bandits would dare to do as they please in broad daylight. Good luck, big brother." Su Xiaochun raised her small fist at Jing Wui, then glanced at Qin Feng and Jing Wui with disdain. "Little sister exploding flowers, let's go to the side first." After Shu Xiaochun and Big Explosion walked to the side, Jing Wui immediately came up and stared at the rotten wooden chest with sparkling eyes. "Hurry up and open it. I have a premonition that this is definitely not an ordinary item," he said impatiently. "How can you wallow in the mire with us?" Tan Xian ignored him. He was the one who did all the good things, but all the bad things and evil people were left to the 2 of them. When Jing Wui heard this, he waved his hand impatiently and said, "Tan Xian, Qin Feng, real men should not stick to trifles. If you haggle over every ounce, how can you accomplish great things?" The 2 of them were speechless. How thick-skinned was this? "Even my sky-splitting axe can't cut through your skin," Qin Feng said. Tan Xian nodded in agreement. Jing Wui did not feel embarrassed at all and said, "I think so I do." There is still a gap between our mental states. You pay too much attention to appearances and can't see the inner essence. On this point, you have to learn from me. Pay attention to the main points and don't put the cart before the horse. The two of them were too lazy to pay attention to him and turned their gazes to the rotten wooden chest. Their expressions were slightly serious. Jing Wui also stopped smiling and stared at the rotten wooden chest. Qin Feng used his mind power to check, but found nothing. This thing is not simple. My mind power has no effect on it. Just open it. Jing Wui took out Decide, but just as they were about to force it open, urgent footsteps suddenly came from not far away. Let's get out of here first. Qin Feng wrapped the two of them with his mind power and called Popcorn and Su Xiaochun over. The five of them concealed themselves and then put the rotten wooden chest into their Chinquan bags and left carefully. In less than a minute, there were flashes of figures and more than a dozen dwarves appeared. A pair of small red eyes scanned the surroundings sharply. Not the giant tribe. Could be the Naga tribe or the heavenly fox tribe. The leading dwarf was quite powerful. He had already broken through the small heavenly realm and entered the ninth heavenly realm. If it were not for the special terrain and their natural weak mind power, they would have sensed Qin Feng and the others. It must be the Naga tribe secretly doing it. Only they know our plan, a dwarf said. Because of anger, his ugly face became ferocious. Let's go back to the passage and have a look, the powerful dwarf master said. As these dwarves left, Qin Feng and the others appeared behind a stone not far away. Damn, even dwarves of this level are here. What is the origin of this rotten wooden chest? Jing Wui was speechless. Let's put the rotten wooden chest aside first. We must find a way to leave here now, Ten Xian said with a dignified face. They carefully followed the group of dwarves and soon returned to the entrance of the passage. Because there were great masters among the dwarves, Qin Feng did not dare to get too close and could not hear what they said. They seemed to have reprimanded a few dwarves guarding the passage and then entered the passage. The dwarves should have left. They are probably going to find a Naga tribe to settle the score. Should we follow them? Tan Xian asked. Let's go and have a look first. It is not safe in the hinterland of the giants. They should soon find that the treasure is missing, Qin Feng said. They carefully entered the passage and followed the group of dwarves. They obviously did not expect that the owner of their treasure was behind them, so they were very fast. When they reached the entrance of the cave, they found that there was only a narrow passage along the ground. They were even more convinced that it was the work of the Naga tribe. As the group of dwarves went out, there was a fierce quarrel outside, and then a great battle broke out. The ground trembled and rumbled. The battle broke out quickly and ended quickly. In less than 10 minutes, the movement gradually subsided. Qin Feng checked with his spiritual power. He was delighted and said, "They have all left." After waiting for a few minutes and confirming that the 3 overlord tribes outside had left, they decisively passed through the narrow hole and disappeared into the vast forest. Until then, in the distance, there was a terrible roar from the hinterland of the giants. Even from far away, they could feel the extreme violence in the roar. The mountain shook violently and the rocks rolled down. In less than a minute, the whole mountain collapsed, revealing a big hand full of black hair. Chapter 379. Entering the Heavenly Fox Tribe. By mistake, Qin Feng and the others plunged into the dense forest. They were scared out of their wits by the giant hand. They didn't know if it was because the giants had a special reaction to the wooden box, but they seemed to feel that the big hand was moving towards them. The owner of the giant hand could smash a mountain with a single slap. They did not know how powerful he was. If they were targeted, they would definitely die. They scurried around like headless flies. They did not care about the direction at all. They just ran in that direction based on their instincts. It was safe and quiet. After half an hour of such an intense journey, they finally came to a stop, panting heavily. He shouldn't have chased us. Jing Wui placed his hands on his knees and panted heavily. They shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They felt like they had just survived a disaster. Qin Feng took out the rotten wooden box. The three of them surrounded it and looked at it. The dwarf clan stole this thing, and the giant clan treasured this thing. Damn it, what is in this rotten wooden box? Jing Wui stared at the rotten wooden box with a burning gaze. The Naga clan also joined the war. Could it be because of this box? Tan Xian's eyes flashed. He told Qin Feng and Jing Wui about some of the things he knew about the 100,000 Bear Mountains. The three of them analyzed it together. You think that this box probably came from the heavenly abyss deep in the 100,000 Bear Mountains? Qin Feng asked. Tan Xian nodded slightly and said, the heavenly abyss is between the 100,000 Bear Mountains and the outside world. The outside world cannot enter, and the inside world cannot leave. The 8 overlord tribes have also attacked the heavenly abyss. Obviously, the heavenly abyss is not simple. If this thing really came from the heavenly abyss, why would it appear in the giant clan? Jing Wui asked. This is also what I'm puzzled about. Tan Xian shook his head and looked at the dense forest around him. He said in a low voice, first of all, if we want to leave the 100,000 Bear Mountains, we have to figure out what the heaven abyss is. Secondly, only by solving the heaven abyss can we know if the rotten wooden chest came from there. Only then can we know why the war between the 3 overlords started. Only then can we come up with the appropriate countermeasures. I'm afraid we don't have that much time to investigate them one by one. Hearing this, Qin Feng shook his head and said, we don't even know where we are now. The most important thing is to figure out the situation here. Survival is the most important thing. Damn it, let's open the box first. Jing Wui took out deicide and stared at the rotten wooden box. Ding dang. With a loud clang, sparks flew in all directions as Jing Wui was sent flying. It's so hard. His saber-wielding arm trembled, revealing a look of disbelief. Qin Feng and Tan Xian were also stunned. They knew how strong Jing Wui's attack was. However, not only did it not affect the rotten wooden box at all, it even sent him flying. Let me try. Tan Xian took out his sky-slaughtering spear and stabbed it violently. The sharp spear gleam flashed wildly. However, he was also sent flying. Moreover, the rotten wooden box that looked like it was about to fall apart did not move at all. There was not even a mark on it. In the end, Qin Feng also tried again, but it was to no avail. The rotten wooden box was too hard. He could not even leave a mark on it, let alone open it. What is this? The three of them were shocked. This rotten wooden box was too hard. The three of them used all kinds of methods, including burning it with fire, drowning it with water, and probing it with their spiritual power. Although it looked like it was about to fall apart, its hardness was something the three of them had never seen before. Waves of battle came from afar. They did not know which 2 overlords were fighting. Qin Feng and the other 2 had no choice but to give up on opening the rotten wooden box. They kept it and ran away. Boom! Waves of battle came from the front again. They had no choice but to change their direction. Battles broke out everywhere in this area. During this period, they saw giants that were dozens of meters tall fighting. There were also dwarves that were less than a meter tall, and there were also serpent people with human heads and snake bodies. The 3 overlord tribes were all fighting here. There were no fixed opponents. Sometimes they saw giants fighting dwarves, giants fighting against serpent people, and even dwarves fighting against serpent people. However, generally speaking, there were more battles between the giant tribe and the Naga tribe than between the dwarf tribe and the Naga tribe. Obviously, the dwarf tribe had guessed that the rotten wooden box had been stolen by the Naga tribe. Therefore, most of the battles were between the giant tribe and the dwarf tribe. The 3 overlord tribes were fighting fiercely. However, this also made things difficult for Qin Feng and the others. They shuttled back and forth between the 3 overlord tribes. Because this kind of battle involved too many people, it was difficult for them to break out of the encirclement at once. They could only use the huge cover of the forest to deal with the 3 overlord tribes. Fortunately, with Su Xiaochun and Qin Feng's mental strength, they were able to foresee the danger in advance and avoid fighting with the tyrants. In a mountainous area where the battle was intense, dwarves that were less than a meter tall each held a sharp weapon in their hands and fought against serpent people with human heads and snake bodies. From the bone-strengthening realm to the spirit-detecting realm, from the small heaven realm to the ninth heaven realm, there were all kinds of levels. On a branch, Qin Feng used his mental strength to hide the figures of the 5 people. He looked at the battle below and felt miserable. Even though he and Su Xiaochun were constantly on alert, it was impossible to avoid all of them. Just now, they were forced into the middle by the dwarves and serpent people and had no way to escape. They could only choose to hide on a tree. The battle was very fierce. In the end, the dwarves were at a disadvantage and began to retreat. The serpent people chased them all the way. After they left, Qin Feng and the others quickly jumped down and ran away. They ran for dozens of miles before stopping. There was no sound of fighting nearby, which made them feel relieved. It's finally quiet. Big Flower Explosion gasped for breath. He was exhausted. No, it's too quiet. Tan Xian's sharp eyes swept around. Qin Feng's face also became solemn. It was too quiet here. He, Tan Xian, and Jing Wui looked at each other, and all of them became more cautious. The excessive silence here made them feel a little uneasy. There were no signs at all, and this was a kind of sensing of unknown danger or imminent danger. "What are you doing?" The 3 of them looked as if they were facing a great enemy, which made Su Xiaochun scared. "Where are we?" Tan Xian looked at the surrounding environment. After he reminded him, Qin Feng quickly took out the map and analyzed the distance and direction according to the direction and speed of escape just now. Then he compared it with the map. At a certain moment, his pupils shrank fiercely and his hair stood on end. "This is the territory of the Heavenly Fox clan." As soon as he said this, the others' faces suddenly changed. Even Su Xiaochun was scared silly. Shu Changkong sternly warned them not to contact the Heavenly Fox clan under any circumstances. It was enough to show the horror and strangeness of this clan. I didn't expect to see an elf and a 2-legged monster together. It's really rare. In this case, stay here. Chapter 380. Delay Qin Feng, Tan Xian, and Jing Wui felt their hearts sink. Their faces turned ugly and painful. They never thought that they would break into the territory of the Heavenly Fox clan. The Heavenly Fox clan is best at creating environments. "Everyone, wake up," Qin Feng said. His spiritual force surged, trying to suppress the drowsiness in his mind. Plop! As soon as she finished speaking, Su Xiaochun's body swayed and fell to the ground. Immediately after, Big Flower Explosion's eyes were blank. Dark green light surged in the depths of her eyes, but she only lasted for a few breaths before fainting. "Damn it," Jing Wui cursed angrily. However, no matter how hard he tried to resist, he couldn't shake off the dizziness in his head. In fact, it was getting heavier and heavier. It was the same for Tan Xian and Qin Feng. No matter what kind of power they used, they could not get rid of the strange dizziness. Moreover, in their distorted vision, they each saw different scenes. Qin Feng saw the city of Sin and returned to the Qin family. Qin Zhen, his mother, and Qin Yao were all waving at him. This is an illusion. Qin Feng quickly shook his head, suppressing the urge to return to their side. The 3 of them quickly got rid of the illusion, but their bodies did not move. It was as if their bodies and minds had been separated, and their souls had been split into countless pieces. They wanted to move, but their limbs were not under their control. I didn't fall into the illusion immediately. Several figures walked over from a distance. They were both men and women, and they all had tails of different colors. They were extremely alluring. One of them was a woman with a red dot between her eyebrows. She was extremely beautiful, and when she blinked her large eyes, she had an indescribable charm. Behind her, there were 5 white tails that swayed like antennae. Her eyes were filled with suspicion. These 3 2-legged monsters aren't simple. They can actually resist for so long. No matter how powerful he is, he can't block Miss Kai Yun's heavenly charm divine art. A man said. His appearance was quite handsome, but his hawk-like eyes gave off a sinister feeling. Moreover, there were also 5 tails swinging behind his buttocks. The woman Kai Yun ignored him. Her bewitching eyes stared at Qin Feng and the other two. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. Without knowing anything, even if you are from the Celestial Fox clan, it would be difficult for you to hold on for so long. Where did these 3 two-legged monsters come from? To be able to make it here, you do indeed have some ability. However, no matter how powerful you are, you still fell in the hands of Miss Kai Yun in the end, the man said with a flattering tone. Kai Yun frowned slightly. She glanced at Mo Chang, who was like a dog-skin plaster, feeling very disgusted in her heart. She turned to look at Qin Feng and the others. Seeing that they were still resisting, she couldn't help but smile. Don't force yourself. You've been hit by my heavenly enchantment divine power. Without my antidote, you won't be able to hold on. Qin Feng tried his best to stay awake and asked, "What is the art of heavenly charm?" The ignorant are fearless. You don't even know what the art of heavenly charm is. Before Kai Yun could speak, Mo Chang spoke first, as if he wanted to claim credit. The art of heavenly charm is the highest mantra of the Celestial Fox clan. The cultivator can release a colorless and odorless demonic chi. Unless you have the antidote, you won't be able to recover. Miss Kai Yun has cultivated the art of heavenly charm to the 3rd level. Not to mention you. Even if a small Heaven Realm Master were to encounter it, he would immediately fall into an illusion. However, it is indeed incredible that the 3 of you could hold on until now. Extremely poisonous demonic chi, Qin Feng murmured in his heart. So the so-called illusion was caused by the use of demonic chi. Under inner vision, he could feel that there was an invisible energy flowing throughout his body, suppressing the circulation of his spiritual power and mind power. Qin Feng tried to use the 100 Calamity Sky, swallowing spell, to devour the demonic chi. He found that it was possible, but it was extremely slow. He estimated that it would take at least half an hour to devour all the demonic chi in his body. However, looking at the current situation, it was obvious that the other party wouldn't give them that much time. Hold on a little longer. Suddenly, Tan Xian's voice came. It was so soft that if they weren't next to each other, Qin Feng wouldn't have been able to hear it. Qin Feng nodded imperceptibly and asked, "Why did you attack us? Didn't the Celestial Fox clan and the Elf clan used to be good friends?" "Huh, that was many years ago." Mo Chang smiled coldly. The defeated Overlord clan shouldn't talk about friendship here. There are only 2 consequences for entering our territory. You can either die or become a slave. Qin Feng raised his eyes and quietly used the 100 Calamity Sky, swallowing spell, to devour the demonic chi in several important acupuncture points. He asked, "Why did the 3 Overlord clans fight? And why didn't you participate? You're about to die, but you still have a lot to say. You know that we're about to die. Why don't you let us die knowing the truth?" "Huh, all right, I'll fulfill your wish." Mo Chung smiled proudly and revealed an expression that said he had everything under control. The 3 Overlord clans fought because the giant clan accidentally fished out a wooden box from the heavenly abyss some time ago. They speculated that it might have something to do with leaving the 100,000 Barren Mountains. However, the giant clan wanted to keep it for themselves. As a result, they were besieged by the Naga clan and the Dwarf clan and secretly robbed of their treasure. However, the Naga clan seemed to have a trick up their sleeves. The wooden box fell into their hands, but there's no hurry. Whoever ends up with the box will be the final victor. Qin Feng was shocked when he heard this. Tan Xian was right. The rotten wooden box came from the heavenly abyss. He thought for a while and asked, "Why did the giant clan get the box? Weren't the 4 Overlord clans unable to conquer the heavenly abyss?" "You have so many questions," Mo Chang said indifferently. "We're going to die anyway. There's no difference whether it's earlier or later. If we're going to die, at least let us know how we've offended you," Qin Feng asked. Entering the Heavenly Fox clan's territory without permission is a capital offense, Mo Chang said impatiently. He didn't dare to say more when he saw Kai Yun's slightly darkened face. He waved his hand, and a few Heavenly Fox clan members walked up with sharp weapons in their hands. At this time, Tan Xian's palm gently touched Qin Feng's back. A white light flickered and seeped into his body, purifying the poisonous gas. With his help, Qin Feng's 100-calamity heaven-devouring incantation sped up a lot. The poisonous gas was constantly being evolved and devoured. During the devouring process, Tan Xian's power of evolution was also devoured. This was equivalent to expanding the purification power in a disguised form. Looking at the few people walking over, Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He suddenly said, "If we know where the rotten wooden box is, can you let us go?" Hearing this, Kai Yun and Mo Cheng's faces froze. The former asked, "You've seen the wooden box?" Qin Feng nodded and smiled. It's khaki-colored, half a meter long and wide. It's extremely tattered. Kai Yun, Mo Cheng, and the others' eyes lit up. This was almost exactly the same as the news from their clan. "Where is it now?" "Now it's time for us to ask you questions." Just as Qin Feng was about to answer, Tan Xian's indifferent voice sounded. Immediately, he walked out from behind Qin Feng with an indifferent expression. Chapter 381. Suppression. Asking us? You don't know the meaning of death. Just as Mo Chang was about to say something, his voice suddenly stopped as if it was stuck in his throat. He looked at Qin Feng and Tan Xian in disbelief. His face was filled with shock. "You guys? How did you guys?" Kai Yun's pretty face was also somewhat shaken. Her beautiful eyes narrowed as she stared at Qin Feng and Tan Xian. She said, "After being hit by our heavenly enchantment divine art, how did you manage to break free so quickly? Now, it is time for us to ask you a question." Tan Xian waved his hand, and the god-slaying spear appeared. A powerful aura erupted from his body. "Oomph, with just the two of you?" Mo Chung recovered from his shock and sneered. "Although I don't know how you broke the heavenly charm art. You two brats at the late stage of the spirit-detecting realm dare to show off in front of us? Miss Kai Yun, you don't need to do anything. I can deal with these two idiots by myself." With that, a powerful spirit force erupted from his body. This spirit force had already reached the mid-stage of the small heaven realm. He looked disdainfully at Qin Feng and the other man with a cold smile on his face. Although he was shocked that the two of them had broken the heavenly enchantment divine power, their strength was there for all to see. They were no match for him, so there was no need to worry. Looking at the calm Qin Feng and Tan Xian, Kai Yun frowned. She felt like something was wrong, but after thinking about it, she couldn't figure out what was wrong. The other side was only at the late stage of the spirit-detecting realm, while they had 2 small heaven realm cultivators and 4 spirit-detecting realm cultivators. They could easily suppress them. And Mo Chung looked at the 2 of them with disdain. He moved his wrist and calmly said, "Kneel and accept your death. That way, it will be easier. Otherwise, I'll make you beg for death." Qin Feng and Tan Xian glanced at Mo Chung and didn't place him in their eyes at all. They stared at Kai Yun. It was obvious they felt some dangerous fluctuations from her, but that was it. "How is it?" Qin Feng tilted his head and asked Jing Wui. The latter smiled faintly. "Just a little bit more." Seeing that the 3 of them completely disregarded him, Mo Cheng's face gradually sank. He snorted and said, "I'll give you one more chance. Kneel and accept your death." "Cut the crap. Do it." Kai Yun's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Feng and the other 2. The longer she delayed, the more uneasy she felt in her heart. Upon receiving the order, Mo Cheng's spirit jolted, and he directly grabbed at the few of them. "I'll leave it to you." Qin Feng didn't even look and walked towards Kai Yun. Rumble. A loud explosion rang out as the spear light exploded. The expressions of the Heavenly Fox clan members changed abruptly as they looked at Mo Chung, who was sent flying in horror. Their scalps felt numb. Kai Yun's expression also changed. Although Mo Chung wasn't very likable, there was no doubt about his strength. However, he had been sent flying by someone at the late stage of the spirit-detecting realm. This strength was simply too terrifying. Just as she was about to make a move, a blade filled with spirit force appeared on her slender, white neck. At the same time, a faint laugh caused goosebumps to appear all over her body. Little beauty from the Heavenly Fox clan, if I were you, I would be obedient and not do anything. Kai slightly tilted her head, and her beautiful pupils shrank, revealing a shocked expression. This person was clearly in front of her. When did he appear behind her? Moreover, when was his poison dispelled? Don't look, none of your people can leave. Jing Wui faintly smiled. Kai quickly looked up, and her face immediately turned pale. She saw Mo Chang's chest pierced through by a spear. He was hanging in the air, powerless to struggle. As for the other four, they didn't even make a single sound and died strangely. There wasn't even a single wound on their bodies. And the one who did it, Qin Feng, was currently calmly looking at her and smiling. Kaiyan's hair stood on end. What kind of monsters were these three? They didn't even have time to react before they were dealt with. Even a 9th layer Heaven Realm cultivator was only at this level. How did you guys cure my heavenly charm art? Kaiyan asked. She couldn't figure it out. When the heavenly charm art reached the 3rd layer, aside from releasing extremely poisonous demonic energy, it could also affect the opponent's mind. Forget the 3 of them. As long as the opponent wasn't a 9th layer Heaven Realm cultivator, no one would be able to resist it. As for the extremely poisonous demonic energy from the heavenly charm art, it was even more terrifying. Unless a 9th layer Heaven Realm cultivator used powerful spirit force to force it out, there was no way to cure it. Their cultivation would be sealed. She couldn't figure out how the 3 of them had so easily broken her heavenly charm art. Any method has a flaw. No matter how perfect a cultivation method is, there is a way to restrain it. Jing Wui patted Kai Yun's head and said, "Don't think that the heavenly charm art is amazing. The few of us were able to reach here because our methods aren't something you can imagine. You're too naive to think that a trifling, poisonous gas and illusion can make us fall for it." This was the first time in her life that someone had rudely patted her head. Kaiyan was so angry that she clenched her teeth. "Falling into your hands, I accept it. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Don't kill me." At this time, Mo Chang suddenly cried out. Being lifted into the air, his face was deathly pale, revealing a terrified expression. "Give me a reason not to kill you." Tan Xian raised his head slightly and looked at Mo Chang. "What's in the rotten wooden box?" Mo Chang's eyes flickered for a moment before he said, "We don't know either. We only know that it's a treasure." Not letting go of the flash of hesitation in the other's eyes, Tan Xian sneered. With a shake of his spear, spirit energy slowly spread out. Feeling an extremely powerful force coming from the spear, Mo Chang cried out in fright. "It's a divine artifact. A divine artifact that can open the transportation formation under Heaven Abyss." Qin Feng took out the antidote from Kai Yun's body. After detoxifying the poison for popcorn and Shu Xiaochun, he asked, "How do you know about the transportation formation?" "We once conquered Heaven Abyss, so we naturally know that the transportation formation needs that divine artifact to open." What a coincidence! The 8 overlord tribes couldn't even break in, and this divine artifact flew up by itself? Tan Xian sneered. "It's true. I'm not lying to you." Mo Chang was about to cry. "That's all I know." Seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, Tan Xian frowned. He looked at Qin Feng and asked, "What do we do now?" "Let them go, of course." Seeing that the Heavenly Fox clan had been subdued by Qin Feng, Shu Xiaoqun didn't have time to ask what was going on. She hurried over and said, "The Elf clan and the Heavenly Fox clan used to help each other. Now that we've let you go, I hope you won't trouble us again." Of course, of course." Mo Chang was stuck in the air and quickly nodded. Puchi, a spiritual weapon shot out and instantly pierced Mo Chang's head. Shu Xiaoqun and Kai Yun were both stunned. They didn't understand why Qin Feng suddenly killed them. The white light hovering in Tan Xian's hand slowly dissipated. He glanced at Qin Feng, shook his head, and smiled. "You're really fast." As he spoke, he turned his palm, and the suction force suddenly increased. Mo Chang's clenched fist loosened, and a signal flare fell into Tan Xian's palm. Chapter 382. Pursuit C. This is the Heavenly Fox clan that you want to let go. You let them go because of your past friendship, but they don't intend to let us go. Su Xiaochun, this is no longer the era of the 8 overlord clans. No one will remember the friendship and agreement from thousands of years ago. If you are always so emotional, we will be tricked by you sooner or later, Qin Feng said to Su Xiaochun. The latter lowered his head and nodded. Understood. Looking at Su Xiaochun, Qin Feng inwardly shook his head. He then looked at Kai Yun, whose expression had changed, and said indifferently, Miss Kai Yun, how should we treat you? The latter was stunned at first. She looked at Qin Feng, Tan Xian, and then glanced at Jing Wui, who was smiling wretchedly. Her pretty face instantly turned red, and she rebuked, How dare you? I won't submit to you even if I die. Seeing her like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, the 3 men's faces were full of black lines. What time was it now? Did they have the time to think about this? Besides, what's the use of being beautiful? You have 5 big tails. No matter how thirsty they are, they won't be so desperate that they can't be picky. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, a large number of golden wind blades shot over from a short distance away, and the sharp sound of breaking through the air resounded incessantly. The faces of Qin Feng and the others suddenly changed. What a fierce attack! Was it from the dwarf race or the Naga race? However, their reactions were extremely fast. Tan Xian swung his spear and threw Mo Cheng's corpse over. At the tip of the spear, a spear light flickered and shot out. Jing Wui swung D aside, and the red light whizzed out. With a muffled sound, the golden wind blade was scattered. Bang bang. Qin Feng quickly approached Kai Yun, and before the latter could react, his finger kept poking her body. A faint golden light flickered. Qin Feng used the golden Zen finger to seal all the spiritual power in her body. Rumble. After doing all this, Qin Feng suddenly hugged Kai Yun and shot out. At the place where they were originally standing, a terrifying energy beam appeared and blasted out a large crater. This is Xinyuan Owl. Qin Feng's face suddenly changed as he shouted. He's from the imperial capital. In fact, there was no need for him to remind him. Xinyuan Xiantian suddenly appeared in front of Tan Xian. His long sword drew out sparks as it shot toward the latter. Tan Xian's expression changed as well. He shook his spear, and a spear light flashed, blocking the sword flowers. At the same time, he stretched out his other hand and clenched it into a fist, clenching it together with Xianyuan Xuantian's fist. A muffled sound rang out as the 2 of them staggered backwards. On the other side, Ouyang Yu was also fighting with Jing Wui. Neither side had the upper hand. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black light shot out, rushing towards Su Xiaochun. Big explosion, Qin Feng shouted. Roar! The big explosion let out a low roar. It clenched its small fist tightly, and dark green scales appeared on its body. The dark walker who had just approached Su Xiaochun and wanted to grab her suddenly felt his heart palpitate. His hair stood on end as he quickly dodged. Boom! The big explosion punched out, and the air seemed to be violently impacted by the big explosion. A passage was created by the big explosion, and the ferocious fist shot toward the Dark Walker. The Dark Walker suddenly struck out with his palm, and his spiritual energy whizzed down and collided with the big explosion's fist. As the air exploded, the Dark Walker was sent flying. He looked at the big explosion with lingering fear. Xinyuan Owl and the others did not succeed in this sneak attack. Their faces were gloomy. These guys were too difficult to deal with. They had seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack, but they had still been neutralized. They actually followed us here. Qin Feng looked at Xinyuan Owl and the others, then looked at the Dark Walker in the air. He immediately understood that they had relied on the remaining power of the Dark Elves to reach this place. You guys really put in a lot of effort to kill us. Killing you is only one of the reasons. Xinyuan Owl shook his head and smiled. He looked at the surrounding forest and laughed self-deprecatingly. Who would like to be trapped for countless years? Don't think that you guys are the only ones who want to leave this place. Qin Feng was stunned. He stared at Xianyuan Owl, and his heart trembled. This Xianyuan Owl was really scheming. The other people in the imperial capital were desperately trying to stop them from leaving, not wanting to break their comfortable lives. However, he did not want to sit and enjoy his current life. Instead, he wanted to leave. If he did not say it, probably no one would have known that he had such thoughts. I think that no one wants to fight to the death at this time, right? Tan Xian looked at them and said lightly. Everyone's eyes flashed. They were evenly matched in strength. If they really wanted to fight, either side would have to pay a heavy price. And in this place, if they were seriously injured, no one would be able to survive. Both sides did not speak, but tacitly retreated. Killing you will always be our first task, Xianyuan Owl said as they retreated. Qin Feng glanced at him and looked around vigilantly. He replied, We will be waiting. Both sides kept a distance and left at the same time, disappearing into the dense forest. Where are you taking me? Kaiyin shouted as she was carried on Qin Feng's shoulder. She struggled desperately, but her spiritual power was sealed. At this moment, she was just an ordinary woman. How could she break free from Qin Feng's grip? They shuttled quickly through the forest. In this area, the battle was very loud. Strong spiritual power was constantly spreading. Obviously, the battle here had alarmed many members of the other 3 overlord tribes. Even the Heavenly Fox clan was alarmed. After all, this was their territory. What? Miss Kaiyin has been captured. The giant clan, the dwarf clan, and the Naga clan? Use all your power. We must rescue Miss Kaiyin. In addition, send someone to contact the other 3 overlord tribes. Tell them that if they dare to hurt Miss Kaiyin, the Heavenly Fox clan will not rest until they are dead. At this time, the Heavenly Fox clan was really on the move. Countless masters walked out, and a murderous aura filled the air. Boom! In a dense forest, there was a violent fluctuation. Immediately, a short man shot out, his body covered in bloody light. Damn, what kind of weapon is this? Its defense is so strong. It only broke after 3 slashes. Jing Wui's arm was trembling. A broken iron rod appeared at his feet. The dwarf clan is naturally good at forging weapons. The weapons they forge have their own spiritual power of heaven and earth. They are much more powerful than ordinary weapons, Tan Xian said after killing a dwarf. Hurry up, they're catching up. Qin Feng and the others fled all the way. After destroying one wave, another wave would appear. Now, they were being chased by the Naga clan and the dwarf clan. If this goes on, we will be surrounded by them sooner or later. Tan Xian's face was solemn. I will lead them away. Wait. Qin Feng stopped Tan Xian, who wanted to lead the enemy alone, and pointed to the front. They looked over and their hearts shrank. Damn, they ran into each other even though they were escaping separately. Was this fate or an ill-fated relationship? Similarly, Xianyuan Owl and the others, who were being chased, were also stunned when they saw Qin Feng and the others running toward them. Qin Feng formed a seal with one hand. The power of water and the power of fire flashed out from both sides. Then, he shouted at Xianyuan Owl, What are you waiting for? Do it. As he spoke, the power of water and the power of fire collided violently, producing a large cloud of white smoke. Xianyuan Owl and the others' eyes flashed. They all burst out with spiritual power. All kinds of lights flashed and surged forward like an avalanche. The white spear light and the red stripe also roared out and hit this force. In an instant, the entire forest seemed to have been set on fire. Multicolored energies of various colors surged out. Flames burned all around, and water vapor continued to spread. Chapter 383. Working together, various lights exploded in the narrow forest, blurring one's vision. After Qin Feng's group and Xianyuan Owl's group rushed in, they tacitly flew in the same direction. Immediately after, a loud explosion came from behind them. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Spiritual energy fluctuations crazily poured out in all directions. Fortunately, Qin Feng's group was fast enough. Otherwise, they would not have been able to withstand the aftermath of the impact. The four overlord clans did not like each other to begin with. Now that the rotten wooden box was in someone else's hands, a war would naturally break out. There were also small forces that happened to discover Qin Feng's group's tracks and chased after them. However, this was no threat to Qin Feng's group. After dealing with this small force, they quickly left. However, the four overlord clans were fighting everywhere in this area, and only a small portion of the forces were chasing after them. Therefore, even if they managed to shake them off, danger still existed. If we continue to run like this, even if we don't get killed by them, we will die of exhaustion, Xinyuan Xintian said while panting. All right, then don't run anymore. Just stay here and wait for them to catch up, Jing Wui snorted coldly and said to Xinyuan Xintian. What do you mean? Xinyuan Xintian stared coldly at Jing Wui. Nothing, just the literal meaning. Jing Wui shrugged. Xinyuan Xintian narrowed his eyes. His long sword vibrated, and an unparalleled sword energy raged. He muttered softly, "It seems like you are very dissatisfied with me." Buzz. Tan Xian did not say a word. His long spear was filled with astonishing spiritual energy fluctuations as he pointed it at Xinyuan Xintian. Are you bullying us because we don't have anyone on our side? Ouyang chuckled and stood in front of Tan Xian. The Nightwalker also walked over and stared at Su Xiaoqun. A deep light surged in the depths of his eyes. Both sides had just shaken off their pursuers and started to confront each other. However, neither side made a move. This kind of relationship was very strange. They clearly had a blood feud, but they just stared at each other and did not make a move. Qin Feng and the others had slaughtered the princes and killed many young heroes of the imperial capital's family forces. And the imperial capital had enslaved them, destroying their roots. The Dark Elves and the Light Elves had a grudge that lasted for thousands of years. The Dark Elves were defeated because of Su Xiaoqun and Qin Feng. This grudge was also difficult to resolve. Both sides had long since said that they could not tolerate each other. It could be said that once they encountered each other, they would definitely fight to the death. However, they did not dare to make a move now because they both understood that even if they could kill each other, they would not be able to survive. Everyone, there's no need to argue here. Since we've come all the way here, I think everyone knows what's going on. Xinyuan Owl looked at the confrontation and smiled. If we continue to fight, I'm afraid none of us will survive in the end. Then what do you want? Qin Feng smiled and stared at Xinyuan Owl. Cooperate. Xinyuan Owl replied with a smile. No matter which side of us eats the other, we'll have to pay a heavy price. When that time comes, we won't be able to deal with the pursuit of the four overlord tribes. I suggest that we temporarily put aside all our grudges and work together to think of a way to leave this place. As for our grudges, as long as we're alive, we'll have time to settle them in the future. Everyone's eyes flashed. When they attacked at the same time to disrupt the vision of the four overlord tribes, they already had this idea. However, the grudges between them were too deep. Even if they had this idea, they never thought of putting it into action. They joined forces just now because the situation was critical and they wanted to resolve it. But now that Xinyuan Owl suggested it, they had to consider these things. Even if they did not fight, it would be difficult for them to survive here. If they could work together, their overall strength would increase greatly. They could also exchange information and understand this place better. Naturally, they would have more ways to deal with it. With a better strategy, their chances of survival would naturally be greater. Everyone, what do you think of this idea? Is it feasible? Xinyuan Owl looked at everyone and smiled. Both parties did not speak. However, from their expressions, it was obvious that no one objected. They were all smart people. Naturally, they knew how to minimize their risks. It was almost impossible to rent a place with the four overlord tribes. This was because any cooperation was built on the basis of strength. Only both parties understood each other's opponents, had similar strength, and had the same goal of leaving this place. Hence, cooperation was the most suitable. Since no one objects, let's work together for the time being. Qin Feng looked around at everyone. His gaze paused for a moment on Ouyang Qingqing, who was standing behind Ouyang Yi, who seemed to be deep in thought. Then he said, "Since we're working together, there are some things that must be made clear. During this period of cooperation, everyone must suppress their personal grudges and put the interests of the group first. Before we successfully leave the 100,000 Barren Mountains, if anyone harbors selfish motives and destroys the cooperation, then don't blame us for working together to kill you. All right, before we leave the 100,000 Barren Mountains, no one can fight." Xin Yuan Owl nodded and said, "Everyone understands the principle. Before we leave, if we fight among ourselves, no one will survive in the end. Let's settle our grudges after we leave the 100,000 Barren Mountains. Everyone make a statement." No one was the leader of the two parties. Therefore, it was not just Qin Feng and Xin Yuan Owl who could talk. After all, they were already incompatible with each other. They had to make things clear so that everyone could abandon everything and cooperate without any worries. "I have no objections." Tan Xian shrugged and put away his spear. "I don't care either." Jing Wui spread out his hands. "Let's go out and fight again." Xin Yuan Xiantian also put away his long sword. Ouyang Yi also nodded, and the spiritual power around his body slowly dissipated. The Nightwalker looked at Su Xiaoqun and opened his mouth. In the end, he shook his head and did not attack again. Since the main forces of both parties had stopped fighting, the cooperation was almost a success. Qin Feng nodded slightly and then looked at Ouyang Qingqing and said, "Miss Ouyang, if you don't agree with the cooperation, you should say it earlier. Don't act like a young lady behind our backs and ruin the cooperation. It's not good for anyone." He cannot be blamed for talking too much. He was really worried about Ouyang Qingqing. She was not as scheming as them. Even if her hatred was monstrous, she could still control it very well and did not show it. However, she kept staring at Qin Feng and wanted to tear him apart. Qin Feng felt that it was necessary to remind Ouyang Qingqing. Otherwise, when she saw the opportunity, she would act like a young lady and attack him. Ouyang Qingqing gritted her teeth and widened her eyes, but she did not say anything. "Qingqing, given the current situation, we can't continue to fight like this." Ouyang Yi frowned and cautiously reminded her, "You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."